So, Co,
Hey,
you are one of our um, newer members. Um, have you introduced yourself at all? I know I'm a couple minutes late. I'm just curious
no, I
where
haven't.
you're at.
Yeah, I was waiting till you or a few other people got in. We could start introductions.
Okay. Gee, where is Lutz at, man?
But I can introduce myself now if you like.
I mean, yeah, why not? Let's
My
get
name's
into it.
Co. The end.
Haha.
Uh, um,
But your background. What do you
yeah,
do these days?
yeah. Just one big thing that really drives me to be here. Right, the biggest thing. This is. Don't tell anybody. This is my favorite project. In 2019, I set up a business registered with the SEC, and I know this is dangerous territory and a decentralized. But the whole goal was to have a decentralized exchange using proof of stake, where the validators were essentially charities, registered charities. So when you would exchange, you would be. Um, sorry, I've got this animation in front of my face. It's making me crazy. So a form of passive donations. And I moved to Miami, gave a speech on decentralized exchanges, sponsored two conferences, stayed in Miami, of course. Moved back to St. Louis. I'm currently in St. Louis right now. Um, yeah.
So curious, it's not like it's not like we can't talk about other projects. In fact,
Right, right.
I think we need to have an environment where that is welcomed, right?
Yeah, bridge building.
So we can create more awareness of what's going on out in the space. So we can all speak freely and of why we um, may admire some aspects or maybe don't, right? I think because one of my biggest complaints about getting involved in these blockchain projects is I quickly notice how tribalistic everybody is.
Mm.
Basically, my project and nobody else's, and that's that. For kind of the overall, maybe that's a bit dramatic, but it sure feels that way, right? And I think that perspective needs changing. You know, if the ultimate goal is to use liberating technology to create alternative systems and without getting too political, but to really free ourselves from some sort of regulatory oversight, it all boils down to adoption. Adoption is going to dictate liquidity and supply and demand, right? Which affects the coin pricing, which affects paying developers and actually developing a project and marketing efforts, so on and so forth. So kind of what I'm leading to is like there's a bigger bag for those who can, shake hands and kind of form alliances in whatever capacity.
Yeah, we're
So
in
that's kind of how my mind's
the
working.
age of bridge building right now. Like the tech is pretty much there. Not necessarily the same with every project, but we're in the age of shaking hands and bridge building, right? Is that what you were getting to?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. I see a lot of other projects that kind of frown upon that, and I think we have a unique opportunity to change that. So dealing with that project that you worked on previously, where does that stand?
Oh no, that project was mainly a bootstrap.
Yeah,
Go
I'm in
ahead.
another meeting now. Woo.
Bogey, are you live right now?
Yeah,
About
bro.
time you got in here.
Everyone, welcome
My bad,
Bogey.
guys.
You're good. You're good. You're just good.
Bogey's my associate. He actually helped me with COEX, which was Kindness of Humanity Exchange. That project is not living currently, but it
Okay.
drives who I am. That's who I am. You know,
Okay.
true decentralization. I went down the rabbit hole. That's mainly why it didn't. The only truly decentralized exchange that I saw at the time was BlockDX, whereas everyone else
Okay.
was trying to fork EVM exchanges, Uniswap, and I'm like, no, no, this isn't. It's not a part of my
Huh.
ethos. I stepped into a whole nother mindset of decentralization. So,
Sure. Well, this is where, and please don't ever let me just hold the mic if
oh,
anyone's
you're
got
good.
anything they want to throw in. Hey, Lutz, but let's look at that term, true decentralization, right? So, were those so-called DEXs truly peer-to-peer with true cross-chain trades? Did they completely remove any intermediary? Yeah, I just jumped in a couple minutes ago also. So, Jason says he's on a phone call right now. We'll be with us shortly, and we're all just kind of hanging out. Co was just telling
Nice.
us he was working on a project previously. That's where the passion began with the so-called term decentralization. Is that fair to say?
Well, true decentralized exchanges.
Yeah.
So true
Sure. Yeah.
decentralization has always been a a passion since a child, but you know
Yeah.
nobody wants to do a mesh
Right.
network. Come join my LAN party.
Mm, right.
True decentralization
So,
possible?
Well, if you
is it
look at the
possible?
word
Yes, sir.
decentralization, it's still you're always going to have one point of centralization,
Oh, yep.
which definitely
Maybe.
fucks with you.
So what is it? So what is that one point of centralization though?
Usually
Besides
either
like looking at
Shin.
like using bridging off the existing
yeah,
internet service backbone.
yeah, either a front end or a CLI or however you interact. So so if Windows breaks, right, we can't access it. We can't access core or Linux.
Okay. Well,
If,
in this
if
case,
if IPv4 breaks, we're
Yeah.
all fucked.
right. So that's why I was leading to the ISP backbone point.
Yeah.
And that in that context I could agree with you. But as far as like,
Oh yeah, I see where you're going with that.
like a
Yeah.
project like in a project like ours, it is truly decentralized, right? All it needs is two or more nodes to keep the network moving, technically, right? It's got that. It doesn't rely on a centralized component such as even the development team with how they push updates. Um, has a decentralized element to it, which will become more and more decentralized over time. So literally each and everything that we're looking at and trying to develop has a decentralized focus. The only real caveat is, of course, relying on an internet service backbone, which you know um, we have a network idea that we are wanting to implement into the roadmap, but that is ever evolving, right? If there's an opportunity to kind of partner and build support with other projects, maybe like Mysterium or whatever the team actually finds is suitable, we're all for that. The little caveat to that idea, though, is still not having reliance on third parties. So is it something that can easily be adopted into each of our user base's nodes and build that mesh network further, right? Um, but yeah, most projects aren't truly decentralized, right? They do rely on a centralized component, which goes beyond the points we just read. This is probably why, you know, uh, I adopted Jason's perspective about proof of stake, right? Lutz and I were talking about this yesterday, where in a lot of cases, you don't even have to run a node in order to stake your coin and take part in that network. For those who are able to become a validator, there's very few validators on the network, right? And whereas with proof of work, at least you're able to provide more hardware, right? There's an incentivization to do so. More hardware means more resources. So while they're getting more block reward, at least it's a win-win situation in that capacity. Now with Qortal situation, we find ourselves in a bit of a unique situation where most newcomers, if and for back of a letter term, if they're going to be lazy and just glance at the leveling system infographic, right? They'll quickly dismiss this project as being a Ponzi pyramid scheme. And it's actually nothing close to that, right? Um, like that aspect of it is based on time and contribution, right? The whole idea of our sponsorship system is to have a peer to peer element. A human interaction is required. Now, of course, no system's perfect, right? And there'll always be ways to, game a system per se. But if you were to really take an unbiased look at our sponsorship and mentor system compared to like a conventional proof of work, compared to like a proof of stake, my personal opinion is we are a more superior concept in that capacity, because it does require that human element. But as you kind of unravel the onion, you'll find that, hey, if anybody can just become a level 5 in approximately 14 months, well, then hell, at that point, they can just self sponsor. And that's been one issue we've been, working on. And it's kind of a whole rabbit hole conversation. But even prior to that, of course, anybody can waltz into a Discord chat and pretend to be a second person and acquire a second, third minting account. So again, it'll never be perfect as long as we set principles of being have no requirements for KYC, being open source without any intellectual property, right? Nothing proprietary with hardware. When we have those kind of elements in place, it'll always be gameable. right? But sure seems a lot more sensible than not requiring you to even run hardware to support the network and just staking coin and literally money equaling influence over the network, buying your influence, right?
For sure.
So that's just how we're looking at it, and we don't necessarily claim that it's perfect and there's no room for modifications. I know there's been talks about how to evolve the system further, and nothing's been fully conceptualized. Um, yeah, everything with our project is meant to have a peer-to-peer focus, right? Peer-to-peer solutions, um, in order to deliver that expectation of true decentralization. So really, as we first kind of went off on this whole thing, is there's really only one key element left behind, which is that reliance on an internet service backbone. Yeah.
I have a question.
Welcome. Let's hear it.
What do you see as the biggest problem with one person having more than one account?
Well, I think that's objective, right?
I
For
mean,
myself,
the problem for the network as a whole.
yeah. Well, again, I still think that's slightly subjective, only because what I mean by that is like, okay, so we now have we have MemPal, right? A memory proof of work. So what that's helped do is limit the number of minting accounts you can have on each computer, right? So if you're dealing with like a Raspberry Pi, you're basically limited to about two minting accounts. That's about the capacity of it, right? Give or take, there's kind of ways to finagle some of these things with resources. If you've got a bigger, greater like PC, gaming PC, you could probably get away with five or more. So it's still not perfect, especially dealing with the technicalities of being open source. But the idea being is we're trying to come up with ways to combat the self-sponsoring aspect. So why I'm bringing up MemPal is because it's allowed it's requiring people to run more hardware if they're going to have more of these minting accounts at the very least, right? At least they're providing more hardware resources. So that's better than nothing. As you see, recently we had a blocks minted penalty to try and address some of the known self sponsors, and it overall did a fairly decent job. Some did fall through the cracks and find a way to circumvent. Through that event, two founders were identified, and one of those two were actually sanctioned as well. The other one was able to circumvent. The development team does intend to go back and clean up those that were identified previously, but that aspect is a manually entered sweep, right? That's not meant to be a live, autonomous, like AI type learning, just vigilance, sanctioning tool. So with that in mind, right, where does that leave the network, which was your question? Well, for starters, why are they doing this? They're doing this to gain more block reward. So of course, that's not fair to the honest minter, right? It's diluting block rewards to the honest minter base. But I mean that it is what it is in that capacity. Um, the other part that can be concerning with this is if people are obtaining a bunch of leveled accounts, those those blocks minted counts equate to a voting weight, right? We've come under a lot of scrutiny for not launching the voting system after all this time, but there's actually been some good reason as to why we haven't, which was to address some of the self sponsors and to try and create a little bit more honest of a system, because when we have the voting system, if bad actor has 10 accounts that all have blocks minted, well, now he's got that much more to factor in and just kind of disrupt more of that honest voting process, right? Now, when it comes to the voting, overall, it's not going to be okay. So, for starters, Qortal is not a DAO, right? It's not a decentralized autonomous organization. Voting decisions will not directly affect updates on the chain. For example, like, hey, depending on option A or B that is voted on, will directly implement a code autonomously, right? So think of it more like polling, essentially, where the dev team and all of us can really take into consideration the will of the people and follow the community consensus in that capacity. Now, that's not to be confused with how on-chain voting can work for those who want to set up their own groups and with this open source code, develop executable DAOs, right? So that is certainly within the realm of possibility as well with this platform. So there's two real areas there. There was, gaming the minting rewards, and that's of course not fair to the honest minter base. Then there is, having more authentic voting system. Then of course there's always that one part on top that is much more less likely at this point, but there's always the element of a 51% attack, right? Now, the reason why I say that's much less likely, and really it's almost virtually impossible. The reason why is because of how our consensus mechanism works, and it actually is tailored to higher level accounts for the actual block signing. But lo and behold, you know, um, we may have to come up with some more revisions and get more tactical in the future in that aspect. There's a whole different element, and technicalities that go into 51% attacks and how our consensus mechanism works, right? So those are the three different areas that kind of raise concern. While the last one is much more less of a concern and likely, these are the three, valid areas of concern. In my
Yeah, I was aware of those points. Just wanted to discuss what is the most important point in those 3 points. Is it vote weight or something else? As I see, the problem with
Okay, here's the
not
fourth here's
as
the,
big
here's
of
the
a
fourth
problem.
point. Yeah, the fourth point that I didn't say goes back to the minting topic, which is if you go look at the price performance, all right, basically, ever since the beginning, we've had a real issue with people dumping coin. Now, hey, it's a free market. We're not going to set sell walls or buy walls, minimum, you know, uh, thresholds, none of that. So it's a truly free and open market in that context. But the problem has been, with all these people who are coming in to the project and just looking at as another coin to mine and dump, instead of there's a real purpose, there's two different real use cases intended for this coin on the platform, and this platform and what it really entails, that is all being disregarded, and it's just um, a large bad actor group that that aren't just geographically in one area. Like we have a large user base of these folks in China, and there's a few more that run rampant in Europe, and it is what it is, right? My point being, all of these folks are coming into this project to try and acquire as much coin as they can to just turn around and dump it. Then when they go into the trade portal, they don't even, they're weak hands. So what they'll do is they'll just see what the cheapest rate is on the board, and they'll sell right below that. So as one person does that after the other, the price begins to just go down and down and down because of a couple of reasons. One is as someone comes into the trade portal, I mean, obviously, we all want to buy the cheapest orders, right? So as that's occurring, and we look at the website such as explorer.com, EXQLORER.com, when you look at that US dollar price, um, Jason said he's available. So join in Discord. So when we look at that price, for example, what we see is the average of the five most recent trades, right? And furthermore, when we look at a U.S. dollar price, that's not a direct value to Court. Court's direct value is with the coin it's exchanging with. So when we look at like Explorer.com, that U.S. dollar is based on Litecoin's value to the U.S. dollar market, right?
Hello.
So hey,
What's
about
up?
time you got here.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome.
So recap. Let's see here. Mr. Ko just introduced himself. his quick background and interest dealing with DEXs and
Very small.
Web3, which we would lightly scratch the surface on. I dived into, kind of talking about, this passion and focus on peer-to-peer solutions, right? Even the sponsorship system with its peer-to-peer elements requiring a human interaction. Kind of scratch the surface about our system with sponsorship and minting versus conventional proof of work, versus proof of stake, and requiring hardware and that buying influence over the network element. And then just a moment ago, the question was raised. What is the real concern behind the self sponsors and everything there? So I raised three key areas dealing with, the minting elements, the voting system, um, and of course, overall, I know that you would say that it's extremely unlikely at this point, but the whole consensus mechanism dealing with 51% attacks. If you got a bunch of people making a bunch of
Right. Well,
accounts
that's
and
also
whatever in that
why
capacity.
the founder accounts mint with an effective level of 10 in the back end, so that the founders
Hmm.
at the beginning can take part in ensuring the security of the chain in that regard, right? So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, that was built in that way to ensure that the chain was secure regardless. So the founders mint with an effective level of 10, that doesn't mean anything as far as anything other than signing blocks. The blocks created by founder accounts are more likely to be the block that gets included
Get
in the
signed.
chain. Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
So
and that's
did I
only at
not
the
read?
beginning, obviously, because once everybody levels up and gets to level 10, then that's no longer necessary. But yeah.
So, but okay, but every node with a level 5 uh, minting key attached is eligible to sign the next block,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So has that evolved more than I'm thinking of previously, as far as like how it prioritizes more of a founder account versus a level
No,
5?
it's always been that way. So level 5
Yeah,
is half the weight of level 10, right? So yeah,
sure.
so the founders just meant as a level 10. So essentially they're more likely to sign the block.
Okay. And
Yeah.
see, that goes back to one thing I also scratched the surface of was, a lot of not a lot of projects, a lot of people will quickly dismiss our project when they just glance at the leveling system infographic and say, oh, it's just a Ponzi scheme, it's a pyramid scheme, when really that whole system, it's meant to be based on time and contribution. And you just introduce another important element as to why we kind of have that, right? It all
Right.
ties into the consensus mechanism as well.
Right. Yeah. It's everything was built with intent, right? There was nothing
Of
that's
course.
in Qortal that was there, oh, just because, right? Like no. We made sure that every aspect was there for a reason, and that goes all the way down to sponsorship and so forth, right? So, yeah, right now, level 5 and higher can sign blocks, and you can see if you look at a recent block who the signature was done by, right? So, yeah, you can see that there are not just founders signing blocks. There are not just, anybody level 5 or higher can sign a block at this point. Now, that could change in the future as we get a lot more level 5s and so forth. We may raise that again because ultimately it comes down to the fact that there are a ton of potential
Mhm.
block candidates each block, right? So that's like the only scaling concern as far as the minting system goes, is the fact that there are so many block candidates. We need to, somehow limit how many of those block candidates are actually candidates. Otherwise, we get, overload with too many block candidates and it becomes a problem. So that's why
Okay.
we have made it so right now level 5 or higher are the only ones who can sign blocks. And in the future, that could potentially change. But of course, now no big changes are going to be happening without the voting system. And we're talking about that now in the developer server. So that is one thing where, yes, right now we're focused on Q apps and we should have been focused on Q apps for a while. Unfortunately, the self-sponsorship stuff delayed us quite a bit, and it is what it is at this point. So the focus now is to ensure that we have the Q apps functionality, because that is what is going to bring basically everyone to Qortal, because that allows everything to take place, right? Like that's the whole idea behind Qortal, is to be able to rebuild all of the things in a completely decentralized fashion, which means we need to have the QApps functionality. So QApps
Right.
is the main focus right now. I brought up the idea of getting the voting system done as soon as possible, so that could be thrown in the meantime or right after the functionality of QApps gets done, the basic first iteration anyway. But when we have that, then we're also able to build applications for anyone else too, right? And that's the idea behind us, potentially starting Corota Consulting and assisting people in building things on top of Qortal. So yeah, there's a lot coming down the line right now, and we are in a really good position overall as far as development goes. I think we're going quite well. We will have functionality that no one has ever seen here in the very near future. And if anyone actually looks into what we're doing, they'll see that we're the only ones doing this. We're the only ones doing it this way. We're the only ones doing it the right way, so that everything is actually decentralized. I also today was talking about, so I realized that, well, I have realized as time has gone on that my original concept behind the fact that getting people to run nodes I thought would be a little easier than it turned out to be. So I'm thinking, like, in the interim, as we're obviously still getting more people to run nodes, but while we're getting the QApps functionality going, I'm considering the idea that you can access a QApp through a gateway node. That gateway node will automatically assign you a randomly generated Qortal account so that you can make use of the Q apps through the gateway, which means that people on mobile phones could use them. People on, any computer without a node running could make use of Q apps with an anonymously created assigned account that they can use then for the authentication, and then have the option to download that account, and then when they create a node, they can import it into their UI and take ownership of it, right? So that's the idea right now that we're going to be working on to ensure that anything that is built on top of Qortal is easily accessible, regardless of, anybody needing to run a node right now. And obviously in the future, when we have light nodes, it'll be a lot easier because we can have an app that's just bundled with a light node, and you can have that on your phone, or just a UI that's bundled with a light node. And then all of the functionality aside from minting can be accessible completely decentralized by that method, right? But until we get to that point and we still have QApps functionality, we need to be able to allow anyone to make use of QApps without, having to worry about installing a node or whatever, right? Some people just, they have a really hard time with tech, right? So it's like we have to have this be easily accessible for people, or it's not going to get used. And as idealistic as I am, I do realize that, right? So until we have the light node functionality and we can just, have a single app bundled with a light node, you're good to go. I think having the ability to access QApps through a gateway, which means that anyone builds a QApp, they could also set up, whatever.com, put up a gateway node on that, and have their QApp accessible through that, right? So then it's good to go. And then anyone can use it. They don't even have to have a browser plugin or anything. It'll just create you an account. You can have the option to download it and set it up later in your UI if you want to. And then you can access everything in that Q app, like, making posts or making comments or uploading videos, whatever, right? And since everything on QDN doesn't require you to have a fee that's paid, right? It could definitely work out that way. The only thing that's right now we don't have would be the ability to publish data without a name, right? So that would require that as well. But so we need to get a little bit more done on the back end for that. But I think that's going to be one of the directions that we're moving in the future too, to allow easy access to all of the stuff that's built on top of Qortal, even if you're on a mobile phone and you don't have anything running on it or whatever, right? So I think that's going to be pretty essential to getting larger adoption, especially right now when we don't have light nodes and so forth. So that's what I was talking about this morning in the dev server.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So hey, throwing around the verbiage decentralized. One thing that came up earlier. So just having a little fun here, right? Nothing's truly decentralized. Well, in Coral's case, we're trying to. Our roadmap consists of virtually every aspect we can think of, trying to at least take a stab at it, right? So beyond the platform and nodes. Okay, one comment I made was, hey, because you had told me this, as long as there's at least two nodes in theory, it's still able to perform and function, right?
Yep.
So we're not reliant on any central component
Right.
in
That's the
whatever.
thing. That's the thing that people need to really understand. It's like, yes, of
Yeah.
course, there is a development team, right? And that development team could be considered centralized, but it's not. Like, in our case especially, our devs are all over the place. There's no company over the
Right.
top of them, like dictating decisions to them.
They're
There's
not in one
nobody who's
country.
right. They're not in one country. It's like we're as decentralized as possible as far as that goes right now, anyway. And new devs can come in from the community, and when the voting system gets there, they will be able to be voted in, and then from there prove themselves and get voted into the dev group and then to the dev admins if they get that far and stay active, right? So it's as
Right.
decentralized as possible. And the thing is too that you need to like people need to focus more on the functionality being decentralized, right? That's
Right.
the thing.
Right.
Like you can do all of the things on top of Qortal completely decentralized. You don't have to have any sort of centralized component in the middle to make use of the things. And that's where like I think people kind of get branched off and like start talking about different things when it comes to decentralization. It's really just the functionality of the platform is completely decentralized. That needs to be the
Right.
focus because that's what matters, right? It's not like yes, the core of it and how it's all launched and everything, but we did all of that as decentralized as we could possibly do from the beginning anyway. So the functionality of everything is what matters. Like all of this you use completely
Right.
centralized. If you can't, that's the problem, right? And so that's where like all of these semi-decentralized looks like for Ethereum chains and whatever, right? They all rely on the user accessing something posted on a domain. Uh, is it
I
still
think
breaking
I
up?
hear you fine.
It sounds fine, or what?
Yeah, it's better
Yeah,
now.
I hear you fine.
You were fine, bro.
Oh, okay.
But I think it was
All
just
right.
different locations.
Okay, yeah, but anyways, like now I lost my
Yeah,
train of
you're
thought.
okay.
But okay, cool. All right. But yeah, it's really like the functionality is what needs to be the focus, right? Like if everything on Quartal can be done without any sort of centralized aspect, then that's the goal, right? And all the other things where like you're accessing a so-called decentralized exchange, but you have to access that decentralized exchange through a domain, right? Now,
Right.
if that domain is no longer accessible and all of the people only know how to access it in that one way, how the hell are they ever going to get access to it again? Right?
Exactly.
They're saying,
Right.
oh yeah, even if they say, oh yeah, like anybody can run a web server and run this and da 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 da. Who's gonna do that, right? Like that's
Right.
my thing.
Right.
Like, and but
It's
if
being funneled
Qortal,
through a central point. Yeah.
right, and
Period.
but on Qortal, everything can be accessed through the Qortal UI, right? So no matter what, if you're accessing something through a gateway and then for some reason that gateway goes out, right? The gateway doesn't work anymore. It doesn't matter. That you can still access everything through the Qortal UI. You don't have to worry about, any centralized component. If it fails, it doesn't matter, right? Like that's the thing. That's the main focus. Like it can't be reliant upon anything that's centralized. So yes,
Right.
gateways are centralized and can be used, but it doesn't matter because you don't have to use it that way, and everybody knows that you can access it directly through the Qortal UI using your own computer, and you're good to go, right? Like, so that's where like there's a subtle difference, kind of like because yes, a gateway is a centralized thing, and you can access stuff through it, but you don't have to do that. That's not the
Right.
only way that you can do it, right? And that's the key thing that I think a lot of people don't really like understand. And yeah, I'm also I don't know. There's just a lot of things that I see that I'm like, yeah, it's a decent concept, but like why? Like for example, NFTs, right? All of the other chains that do NFTs. Say you have like a digital piece of art and you wanted to be the owner of that digital piece of art. Okay, fine. Person issues it as an NFT. Okay, great. Now I have the proof of ownership on a blockchain. Great, fantastic. But the data itself is stored on a centralized server. Now tell me, like, how the fuck can you say that somebody owns that? You're not the one who runs that centralized server. So you don't own shit. Like, yeah, you have the proof of ownership of it, but the data itself could disappear. It makes no sense, right? Like, so when
Right.
we do our NFT functionality, it will be the data and the proof of ownership both on the distributed decentralized network, so that you actually own that piece of data. That piece of data is tied to the name. You can sell that name, and there you go, right? Like, so a name will actually be able to be an NFT. It'll be able to be a lot of things. It'll be able to be an entire brand or an entire company, or as small as just a proof of ownership, right? Like,
Right.
it's crazy
Whatever
flexible.
intellectual
Like,
property, right?
right, exactly. And I also have some concepts for things like proof of ownership for physical assets that could potentially work. I have some little ideas here that I'm working out, but something like that where there's no centralized single point, but yes, the physical asset will go along with the digital asset, controlled by whoever ends up owning that digital asset. It's like for like physical silver or something, right? Like, you could say this asset represents 5 ounces of physical silver. The physical silver is currently held at the owner location. If it gets sold, that owner will ship it to the next person, right? So there's a lot of
Right.
stuff that you can do with it that's pretty cool. Ours is a lot better because the data and the proof of ownership is there in the same location, and you don't have to like track down wherever this fucking data that you apparently own is. It's just nonsense. So like, I don't think that any Web3 platforms actually exist other than Qortal. We're the only one
Mm,
that's actually doing it decentralized, right? There's no
that's a
other
bold
platform that
statement.
has, dude. Show me one. Let me see one,
Yeah.
and I'll
Yeah.
poke holes in it for you. Like, that's really
Right.
the thing. I've not seen a single one that I would actually consider Web3, because they're using, yes, okay, blockchain authentication, but no one runs a node. The authentication is done with just a single browser plugin, which I can't see that being completely secure, but whatever. We'll avoid that and just say, okay, fine, it's secure, whatever. But no one runs a node. No one actually accesses things in a decentralized fashion. Most of the data is on centralized servers. All of the access to this data is on centralized servers. It's just like, okay, great. You have one decentralized component that is a very
So
overpriced
one
blockchain. It's just like, wow,
mm,
okay,
you
great, yeah.
one way you've put it before was decentralized wrapping around centralized components.
Right. It's like, yeah,
Mm.
you have one decentralized component that does not then say your entire platform is decentralized. They've bastardized the terminology so much in the space that people don't even know what this means anymore. Like, when I say we have cross-chain trading, people are like, "Oh, so you're trading wrapped tokens." It's like, no, 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 no. People like just don't even understand what this stuff is anymore because it's been bastardized so much by
Right.
all of this other existing stuff. And that's really the like
So,
the roadblock that we're hitting right now is like that. Yeah, go ahead, Lutz. Go ahead, dude. Yeah.
so how is Qortal more decentralized than maybe BSV?
I don't really know anything about BSV, but yeah, I would have to like look into it before I could tell you. But ultimately, are they? I have to see it. I can't tell you because I have to see it. BSV is just a Bitcoin clone, right?
Pretty much.
It's a big block clone of Bitcoin. So
Right. So
so
it's the
what
same
so
thing as
what
Bitcoin. Yeah.
they claim that that's the original design, and
Yeah. Okay.
they
Mm.
totally neglect the fact that it's not private at all. You know, they just hanger on to this idea that it's the original design, and
So
that they
like,
could do a lot more on it. And now at the moment they're stuffing blocks into Bitcoin's blockchain, hoping to break it with what are
yeah,
those new
the
things
NFT
called?
things that they're doing. I forget what they're called. Yeah. What are they called?
Anacles or
Oracles, or no? I don't
Yeah,
even know. Is it?
UTXOs,
no, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
know.
yeah.
the
Well,
satoshis.
yeah. But they're using them to make some sort of NFT thing, basically, right? But what they're doing is they're putting the data on the chain,
They're
which
stuffing blocks. They're stuffing the
I've
chain.
never
They're loading it.
understood putting the data on the chain. That's just not scalable. That won't work. You can't put the entire internet on a blockchain. It just won't work. Like,
Mm.
I don't understand why anyone ever thinks that's going to work, because, like, okay, I guess it'll work if you say, okay, the only people running nodes are massive corporations that have huge server farms that can expand their data to whatever size, right? Then that's not decentralized, right? So it's just like, wow, okay, like, this is a total joke, right? Like,
Well,
no,
it's another false pretense. Just like how,
yeah.
if I could add in here, hey, I'm still learning. Don't shoot the messenger. From what I understand, Bitcoin's code is multiple different piggybacked code bases. So for someone to come along and claim that they have the original code, just puts a question mark in my mind, because I already know that it's multiple different repos that were piggybacked off of. So,
Well,
anyways, seems
yeah,
like
I
two
don't
different sets
know
of false
what you're talking
pretenses.
about specifically, but like I mean, yeah, Bitcoin was built with a bunch of different like cryptography repos and so forth, but yeah, like
Right.
the idea is the new thing, right? The blockchain itself was the idea. And it's a great idea. Like but
So,
blockchains are not
so,
just for like
so
financial shit.
technically, why? So you come up with any example, like compare it to any other coin. And I could answer the question, but I want you to do it. Uh, locally, right? Why is Qortal different? Why is it more decentralized than any other coin? Just on a very simple level. What makes it more decentralized?
Well, ultimately, because the primary method of accessing everything on Qortal is done by way of a user setting up a node and accessing things on their own computer, right? Like that's what makes it the most decentralized is because we're right now, every single one of the Qortal users runs a node.
Well, you could do
With
that on
local
Bitcoin
wallets.
too.
You
You could run
could,
your own local node on
but how many
Bitcoin.
Local
people have
wallets,
600 fucking
you have your
gigabytes to
keys,
dedicate towards just
but
running a
not your
node?
keys, not your crypto, not your keys, not your crypto. 101. And yet we
So
still see that main principle not being understood
That's
in the
fucking
space.
centralized exchanges and shit.
Look
Yeah,
at
that's
FTX and
we're gonna have to
Celsius and
see, I
BlockFi.
guess, a lot more of them fail before people really understand that one. But it's whatever. Like, what is your answer to that question, Lutz? I'm curious.
well, on a technical level, the way the software works is the answer. It's
Right.
because everything is running localized onto the computer,
Right.
unlike everything else. So if you look at, let's say, I don't know, any other chain out there that provides a service, the service is always provided on a by
Right.
a third party, or a
Exactly.
third, or on a host, or on web services. And then and then even the operation master nodes, right? Say your coin has master nodes, it's centralized because,
Yep.
just because you think you have 56 master nodes holding up the whole fucking network doesn't mean that tomorrow Cloudflare is not going to have an outage and totally take all 56 down because the idiots are using Amazon Web Services, all of
Right.
them.
Mm.
Yep.
And all of a sudden your whole network is down, and that has happened. I'm talking from experience. That
Yep.
has happened before.
Yep. It
All right,
it
so
definitely can happen, and that's why people suggest running nodes on virtual like VMs and stuff hosted in the cloud. I'm
so
like, yeah,
so
that's okay, but it's not ideal, right? Like,
it's not just a wallet. Every service that wallet is offering, that typically is offered on third parties, is there locally, right on your computer, performing on your computer. It's all local. There's nobody
yep.
that could take that down unless they walk in your house and they shut off your fucking computer. You understand?
Yep.
So that's
Right.
why that's the most important idea you people got to get in your heads, is that the only way you want a service to shut down is they have to walk in every single person's house and shut down their computers.
Right.
Mm.
Or kill the entire internet all at once right now until we get the
Right.
working and
So can you
established
lead
and so
into
forth.
that
Yeah.
point about if they were to so-called block ports and what the vulnerabilities are? Because that was one thing I wanted to
Yeah.
go back to for you to address. Where okay, if the platform itself has got all these true decentralization, what about relying on the internet service backbone?
Yeah, I mean, for now, that's the only option, right? Like, what other worldwide communication system exists that everyone has access to, right? Like, so
Right.
we had to start somewhere, right? So we start with utilizing the internet. However, we build it in such a way that we can replace that internet connection with any other type of connection, and it'll work just fine. Everything else will work exactly the same. Doesn't matter which protocol we're using to communicate, as long as
Mm.
everything else is built to work, completely local and so forth. So, like, there's no like, if they decided to try to block Qortal, what would they do? Block port 12392? Okay, whatever. We can just change the port we use. It doesn't matter. Like, the only way that they can actually stop it would be to kill the entire internet all at once. Like, if two nodes are still running, it's still running, right? So, like, the entire internet would have to be killed all at once for it to actually make an effect on the network. And I really just don't think that that's something that we have to worry about right now. I mean, potentially in the future, that's a thing, but by that time, hopefully, we'll have mesh network pockets established all over the place, and hopefully, they'll start bridging to one another, and we won't need internet connections as much. Like, so the way I see this all playing out, right, is we launched the ability to connect Qortal over Reticulum, which is a really cool mesh networking software. Automatically establishes connections, automatically keeps those connections established, works over any sort of wireless connection you could think of, from ham
IP-less.
radio. Yeah, IP-less has its own communications protocol. It's literally ideal. It's exactly what I would have wanted to build if I didn't find it, right? So it's amazing that this exists already, right? So the only thing we have to do is make Qortal communicate over that. Once we do that, then individual little pockets of mesh networks can start being established in different locations. Now, of course, while it's still being built out, those mesh networks will have to have at least one internet gateway on them. Now, that could be somebody takes and bounces a wireless signal all the way down to their nearest Starbucks and steals that connection and brings it back and uses that as a gateway for the network, right? It doesn't matter which internet connection you have. As long as you have an internet gateway, you can get to the rest of the network. Now, in an ideal scenario, you'll have a mesh network that has, say, 5 internet gateways on it. So now each person not only has one internet connection, they all have 5. So even if their own local internet connection at their house goes out, they still have communications over the Qortal network, right? So that's the way I see it happening, is there are a bunch of little mesh networks established in different places with at least one internet gateway on each one, until eventually they start getting large enough to where they can reach directly to one another. Now, if everyone who know about Facebook right now were to instead have Qortal software installed and the mesh network available, then we wouldn't really need internet at all except for communicating across oceans, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that would
Right.
be like, yeah. So it's like it's totally possible, right? It's totally possible. I see it happening. I see, like, we get a mobile application which is just basically the UI with a light node and mesh connectivity, right? Then anybody just
Mm.
installs that app, boom, they automatically establish a mesh with whoever's nearby has that app running, right? They're good to go. It's freaking brilliant, dude. Like, and it'll definitely work. It obviously won't happen overnight, but yes, it's absolutely possible to replace the need for the internet. The only hard part is reaching across oceans. And now there are multiple ways that we can do that. Some people believe that, there is no space and satellites can't be a thing or whatever, right? But
Mhm.
satellites could potentially be a method to do that. There's also longer range wireless communications that are possible. Ham radio is possible. However, the bandwidth there just isn't quite up to par. So now, could we take multiple of them and use them together to expand the bandwidth? Potentially, right? Like, there are multiple ways to get around these issues. We just have to figure them out as they come, and plan for them as best we can, right? I've got someone who is building a satellite. It wasn't meant to
Mm.
be a mesh satellite or communication satellite. It was just literally meant to be something we could put up there and say we have a website hosted in space for right now. But the idea is we can do that type of thing. Yes, we need a little bit more as far as resources go. We can use Crowdfund, which is Qortal's crowdfunding platform that hasn't launched yet, but it will. It was already existing on Quora before, but that we could use to crowdfund the funding necessary to make these kinds of things happen, so that the community actually owns them, right? And there's no, like, centralized ownership of any of the distributed infrastructure either, right? So yeah, that's what I see happening. Hopefully, like, that's the plan.
I have two things, if you would. Two things. So, um, seeing IP addresses and what that really entails with our network, and then if you could also finish off with what exactly the internet service provider can see with this data being transferred and what that might relate to with encryption.
Yeah, okay. So right now, all of the data on QDN, they can't see anything. I mean, it's just all encrypted chunk nonsense. Like, so the only
Peer to
data
peer,
the only data that they can actually see if they're sitting there monitoring all the
end to
traffic
end almost.
is they can see, well, it's not end to end, it's just encrypted, right? So the public data has a key that's there. So obviously, because it's public, we want everybody to be able to view it. So the only way you can do that, though, is to view it through Qortal, whether it's through a gateway node or through your own local node. That node knows how to decrypt and build that data to show you, right? So all of the data, as far as, like, if an internet service provider was looking at it and trying to figure out what it was, they wouldn't be able to tell what it was. It's encrypted chunked nonsense. So there's nothing that they can see as far as that goes, unless they're running a Qortal node and then they click to view that data, right? So it's completely secure as far as that's concerned. Now, the only thing that is not encrypted is the communications as far as sync data goes. So like the one node asking the other node for blocks and those blocks getting sent to them and so forth. So which is something that we will be working on in the future, making that encrypted as well, so
Is
that they
that
can't even
Dandelion?
tell. No, Dandelion's a different thing. So Dandelion is so when a transaction gets submitted, right? If you happen to have a massive node set up that has like hundreds and hundreds of peers and a bunch of those nodes set up, you could potentially find out the origination node for that transaction, right? So what Dandelion does is instead of making the transaction originate from the node it actually originated from, it makes it originate from another node that it's connected to, right? So then you can never tell which node actually originated the transaction. So that is something that we're definitely going to do as well. So right now, those are the only two things that you could say are not as good as they could be, which would be the no encryption on the communications for the sync traffic and no dandelion, which means that when you initiate a transaction, that transaction is initiated from your node, right? So
Mm.
if you have enough nodes with enough peers and you can find out where that transaction actually originated from, you could track down which node's IP address that transaction came from. So that's the only thing, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Quick says Dandelion is like instead of posting something in public, you hand it to your friend who hands it to someone else to post it in public. Exactly, right? So it's not, yeah, so it's not like just coming from you. It's still coming from you, but it's coming from you through someone else randomly. So there's no way that they can actually find out where it really came from, right? So we're definitely going to do that. I don't know how difficult that is, and I don't know how high that is on the development list right now. Primarily, we're focused on Q apps right now because I think that that's really going to bring a lot more attention to the platform, because being able to build literally anything you can think of on top of a actually decentralized network is going to be pretty massive, I think. So that's the focus right now. Hopefully we can get that done within the next few months, and then we can start focusing on more of the like security type things, like with encryption on the sync traffic and the dandelion stuff and whatever, right? Like, but ultimately the main focus really needs to be getting our primary functionality, which is Q apps, right? And
Mhm. So that
so that
first
comes along.
iteration, what are the
Yeah,
limitations
yeah,
of
yeah.
it?
So we'll have cross name linking. We'll have the ability to do marketplaces and merchant sites. The initial iteration will only support court, which I think is good because then it'll also give people more reasons to buy court. So we will eventually support all of the coins, but that just requires extra development that we don't want to put into it right now. So initially, it'll be court only that's supported on the markets, and on merchant sites. You can add that support. We will have the ability to do like video hosting or social media type things, where we can do like a Twitter replacement or a Reddit replacement. The only limitations are going to be basically the single publish file size limit. So right now we call that an overall file size limit because you can only do a single publish right now. But what it
500
really is,
megabytes?
yeah, but what it really is, it's a single publish file size limit. So it's not like an actual limit on the name size. It's a limit on how much you can publish at once. So we will be increasing that as well. That's not really a primary thing right now because even with 500 megabytes, I mean that's pretty good. And I can think of ways to make it so that if say you have a video that's 3 gigabytes and you want to publish that, it'll just automatically split it up into multiple 500 megabyte chunks and publish it in multiple transactions. And then on the way back, it just gets rebuilt in the same fashion. So we will test this as it goes. So right now we're working on improvements on QDN in the backend so we can make sure that we have the necessary stuff to make all this take place, and then we can work on increasing that single publish file size limit later on. So we want to see how the network reacts with everything and the existing single publish limit to see how it goes, and then we can make improvements as necessary and then increase it. We'll probably first just increase it. So maybe go from 500 megabytes to 1 gig or 5 gigs or whatever. See how it goes from there. and then make any other improvements that are necessary. Ultimately, eventually, it will be unlimited because there is actually no limit as far as like anything else is concerned. It's really just the way that the data is processed before it's published, and that's why there's a limit, because we don't want to use more than 500 megabytes of RAM on someone's computer, and that's how it's done right now. It goes into RAM first. So, but yeah, yep.
So what about the getting it into everybody's hands, which is what I spoke to you about before, with the ease of deployment? Not everybody's got a computer, not everybody's got a laptop or anything like that, but most people have a mid to high tier mobile phone, and they are totally capable of holding 600 gigabytes and a full node. Just wondering if there's any kind of like roadmap for that, because that would be, in my opinion, would be a very good target to
Right.
to try and reach
So
for.
that's definitely part of the longer term goals. The idea that I see and how this all playing out would be that the UI is basically the only thing that someone needs to install, whether that's on a mobile phone or a computer, whatever, right? Like, so you install the UI. The UI comes along by default with a light node, which allows you to do everything except for Mint. Then you have the options in the UI under potentially node management, where you can say set up full node or set up top only node. And actually, we're probably going to be getting rid of the top only node completely, because we're going to be making the full node so much smaller that the top only node basically doesn't make any sense. So a full node in the very near future is going to be going down to a total size of 7 gigabytes. So that's pretty amazing, considering that you can basically run 30 years of the blockchain in like 30-40 gigabytes, so which is pretty incredible if you consider the fact that Bitcoin is already 700 gigabytes or something for their full node. So the way that we do the archiving, which allows the blockchain to be a lot smaller, but also allows you to still call that data that's archived, is freaking brilliant. And Cal being able to put that together was like absolutely incredible. So that eliminated basically all of the concerns for scalability as far as the size of the database goes. So ultimately what I see in the future is a single app that you install, the Qortal UI. You install the Qortal UI, then from there in node management, you have the option to say set up full node, and it just installs it for you, launches it, you're good to go. So whether that's on a mobile device or any sort of desktop server, whatever, right? Like, so you just install the UI, you point it to wherever you want it to install the core, you go, bam, it's done, right? So yeah, and
So
the
we do
UI
envision
coming along
mobile
with a light
phones
node would
being
be great.
a full
Yeah.
node one day.
Yes, it's
Wow.
possible. Totally. Yeah. So,
Getting it into the hands of
Yep.
everybody, literally in
Right.
their hand, rather
Right.
than
Yeah.
on their worktop or
And
whatever.
that's one of the coolest parts about the core being written in Java, right? Is that it's natively cross-platform. So literally any computer can potentially run a full node for Qortal. Now, the setup, you can run a full node on your phone right now. It's possible. Like, it's just doing it is a little bit of a task, right?
And
So
we have a
we need to,
guide on the wiki if
yeah, we
anyone's
have a
interested.
guide
It's
that
under
you can do it.
Android Termux. Yeah.
It's just not
Yeah, but that
ideal.
requires you
Yeah,
to go
right.
into the nitty gritty of it, and
Exactly.
not many
And
people are going to want to do that. They want it as an APK.
right, exactly. So once we have basically a Qortal UI APK that you can install, and then have an option maybe to either install another app on a phone, or to just have that UI app install the full node for you and give the rights to the app to do that. I don't know how it's going to work on phones. I'm really not a phones guy. So it could be potentially you download another app which acts as the core and runs a full node, or it'll be, give the rights to the UI app to access your whatever it needs for that, and boom, it installs the full node for you. But ultimately, the idea is to have everything as simple as possible, which means having one installation, which then allows you to do everything else. So I think the way it makes the most sense is we have the UI, you install the UI, and then from there in node management, you just say install full node, and it sets it up for you, and you're good to go. Like, so that's the way I see it working.
Or just have the full node as part of the package, but then have it disabled as default, and then give them the option to enable it.
Right, yeah, either way, doesn't matter. But yeah, it needs to be that simple, basically. You have the UI, you set it up, everybody can walk through a single setup, and if it's the Mac, drag and drop, whatever, it's set up, it's good to go. You run it by default, it uses a light node, so you can still access everything on Qortal, you don't have to synchronize the chain, it just works. Then, if you want to, and you want to mint, or you want to have the rest of the functionality that comes along with, adding a full node, and being part of the network, then you just go bam, install it, and you're good to go. So that's the way I see it working, ideally, where it's just super straightforward.
Yeah, I'd like the redundancy of having my node running, but for instance, if anything goes offline, one or the other, I'd like to know that one or the other is backing it up, so that if my node goes offline at home, my one that's running on my phone is just like there, just like plodding along, saying, "Oh, it doesn't really matter because I'm on a different network."
Right, exactly. Yep. And of course, you can always point to another full node if you want to make configuration changes on that node, or add a minting key to that node, or whatever, like set up your trades to work on that node so it's not on a phone, which could potentially lose connection or whatever, right? Because if you're doing trading, you want to make sure that you're on a stable connection, because, if your node goes down, then your trade could potentially not work, right? So if you wanted to, you could point your mobile node or your mobile phone to one of your nodes that's running at home or whatever, and set up your trades on that, and then switch back to your mobile, and use that for Q chat or whatever, right?
All of a sudden,
Hmm.
you get hundreds of thousands of users using this. Um,
Right.
how scalable do you think this is? How scalable is the chain?
So, like I said, the only concern when it comes to scalability is with minting and the number of minting signatures being submitted. So, it wouldn't matter. Right now, if we got 100,000 users that joined, it would make no difference whatsoever, because those 100,000 users would not be level 5. So, it would not make a difference as far as like worrying about scalability. Like the stuff on QDN is 100% scalable. There's just no question about it. It's 100% scalable. It'll scale like to whatever size, uh, easily. So, and the blockchain itself, same thing. And we're about to make that a lot smaller. So it's about to be like even more scalable than it is now. Like right now, it keeps itself between 25, 30 gigabytes, which is still really good, but it's going to be like between 7 and 10 gigabytes, which is like really, really good, right? And that'll
How,
make the
So,
download for the
mm,
full
how,
node, the
well,
database much smaller too. Like,
well,
so.
I'm not sure what the variable for users is in scalability for this chain. I'm guessing that the more people using it, the more scalable it will be because everybody's
Right.
actually running a full node. Uh, so I'm talking about scalability in terms of how many transactions per second can this chain do.
We have never like actually tried to figure that out, but honestly, that question annoys me because that's not how blockchains work. You don't measure transactions per second on a blockchain. It just doesn't work like that. You can measure, how many transactions of a certain type can fit into a block, and then go, okay, how fast is the block time, and how fast are the confirmations, and so forth, and then you can get to like a relative number that's kind of similar to that. But that's just not how blockchains work. You have a total amount of data that can fit in a block, right? It doesn't go anything per anything, like not per second or per minute or anything like that. That's not how it works. So like asking that question, are these guys touting, oh, we could do bazillion transactions per second? It's just nonsense. Like that's not how blockchains work. So I don't understand that question at all. Like I think that since we have the same block size as Bitcoin, yet we have 60 seconds in theory blocks, we can handle by default 10 times more transactions than Bitcoin can at the base level, right? And then of course it is possible to develop other types of layer 2 or whatever they like to call them, ways to scale transaction submissions and
Right.
so forth, so
Hey,
that
I'll
but
explain
yeah.
a little too. Uh, so on most networks, guys, there's a lot of light nodes and third-party services that do some work for you, right? When you're using it, you're putting a burden on something else, uh,
Yep.
because you're not a full node, right? You're not doing everything locally. Right. I'm trying to impress locally on you guys. This is the importance of everything being local. The fact that Q apps will run a service local, that the only way to shut it down is to shut everybody's computer down, like I said earlier. They have to walk in your house and shut it down. All right. Uh, that's the importance that you have to see here is that you're going to hold your own, right? So whatever you do, you're going to provide the power for what you do. And if everybody
Yep.
does the same thing, the whole network is self-sufficient. It's self-governed. Uh, Unlike other chains where the band-aid is to use a third-party service, a centralized service to get certain jobs done. At some point in time, the whole chain is full of different types of third-party services and is basically infected and no good to use anymore. As far as decentralization, if you want something truly decentralized.
Yep. Totally correct. And yeah, we don't have any concerns as far as scaling goes. Like if you wanted to try to test how many transactions we could put into a block in however long, like we could try to do that. But yeah, like I'm not concerned about that aspect at all. We can fit, quite a few normal types of transactions into, and that's the other thing about Qortal is that like there are tons of transaction types. It's not just like, send payment. Like that's the only transaction type on most like Bitcoin and chains like that, right? There's only like a very few transaction types on most chains. On Qortal, we have fucking what, like 40 something transaction types, and we're going to keep getting more. So like each transaction type is going to be a different amount of data that's used on the chain. So asking how many transactions per second would have to be like how many of these types of transactions, if they were all these types of transactions, could we do within one block, which would be 60 seconds? And then you could say, like it's just you can't estimate those numbers, not really. Like so, yeah,
Are we
And
still a 2 megabyte block cap?
yeah, yep.
Okay. Is that ever gonna be lowered or increased or?
It could be. There's no reason to consider that at the moment, but if it
block
ever got to
size,
a point where that would be a thing, it could potentially be modified, but I don't think it's necessary.
block size could be changed on any chain, bro. It's not
Yep,
an issue.
it can be changed, especially on Qortal because we can do quote unquote hard forks by way of an automatic update. So like we can make these types of changes really, really easily without anyone, having to worry about doing anything. So yeah.
But there's always a trade-off sometimes. Well, for the most part, there's always a trade-off. So there's a reason why block time stays small. Is so the timing is faster. The size is if it's too big, things might slow down. So you got to take all these things into consideration for the
We're
purpose you're
nowhere
building the
near
chain.
Yeah, we're nowhere near maxing out our block
Yeah.
right now. Like nowhere near it at all. Like most of our blocks are empty. So like we don't have that concern for like a really long time. And also, if you take into consideration the fact that multiple minter signatures are being submitted all the damn time, then you can get a rough idea of how many transactions the chain can support just by counting those minting signatures because it's a similar thing, right?
You
So,
see, you see
yeah.
what's going on in Bitcoin right now with ordinals. Have you heard of ordinals?
Yeah, that's the NFT thing, right?
Yeah, they're stuffing pictures into all
Right.
the blocks
Yeah,
intentionally. Like they're
right.
actually paying to do it. They're
Yeah,
stuffing
great.
blood. Yeah, so they like BSV is keeping this old war going by now saying, "Oh, look, guys, come on, let's stuff the blocks. Let's break Bitcoin." Right?
Yeah.
So that BSV for some reason will become relevant. Which guys, think of this. I just want you guys to think of this. All right. Pro added pirate with no fucking issue whatsoever, right? I mean, not just Crow and the whole team added pirate, right? Do you see pirate on any one of those BSV, Bitcoin, any one of their projects that they've made with exchanges? Do you see them open easily just taking in a good project that has privacy? No, no, because they have an agenda, right? They're because they're controlled by something or someone or some
Mm.
people. You understand?
And if
So
you're talking to with a blockchain and they're immediately saying, "Oh yeah, we're following regulations," that's a red flag to me, honestly.
yeah, boom. Like I'm sorry, those aren't my regulations. I don't live by
Right?
those regulations. So I'm sorry.
Well,
I don't
sure,
know
because if it's truly
who's
decentralized, what jurisdiction?
Right. Yeah,
What
how
are
are
we
you
talking about
following
here?
regulations? How is this even possible? Like, that's the
Sure.
thing. Like, you can't follow regulations when you're a worldwide decentralized platform. Like,
Hmm.
how do you follow regulations when they're different in each
Or in
location?
other
And
words,
like, like,
there is no means of direct regulatory
right?
oversight,
They can't.
right?
It's not possible. You can't
Right.
regulate
They have to
something
go after
until they regulate.
individuals somehow, some way, and try and
Right.
claim whatever. We'll
They could
see
come
how
after me and say
Congress
that it's
goes in
my
our
fault
situation.
for launching it or whatever, but that's about it.
But
Like,
you
yeah,
don't have sole control. You can't
no, I
right
don't.
now make any changes on your own will,
Nope.
right? Can you explain
Nope.
how that works? How does that work
Hmm.
with the updates?
So, yeah, the updates are done. Well, the automatic updates are done in such a fashion where the developer group on chain, which is the group that has all the developers in it, obviously, and the ones that are in the admin section of that group. So basically, they're ones that are voted in. Now, we just changed it recently to where the existing dev admins are the ones who are allowed to vote in new dev admins. So the group has to be in agreement for a new dev admin to be added. Then from that point on, the dev admins are the ones who sign the automatic updates. Now, if we don't get enough signatures, the update will not go out. So it has to be agreement within the dev team before an update is pushed. Everyone has to say, yes, okay, let's do this. And then it gets signed and then it gets updated. So there's no way that one single person or even 40% of the group could go rogue and decide to update the chain willy-nilly, right? And not only that,
Mm.
you also have to have someone with the capability to issue the update transaction. Now, the only two people that right now could even do that is Cal and Kat, right? So we have more development training to do in the future, obviously, but for now, there are only two people who could even issue the automatic update transactions without doing a lot of learning first. And then we have to have, 50% or more of the group signing to say yes to actually issue those updates to the chain. So it's not
Another
possible for
decentralized element.
it's not
You know, the,
possible for one
the
single person to do anything. Yeah.
the fact that it got done is the most important, right? So you guys got to give a lot of respect to Qortal for the fact that they added Pirate.
Yeah.
You guys are
It
overlooking
wasn't
the fact
simple. We
that
just have really good devs. Yeah.
no, you don't understand. Pirate is unwelcome everywhere. It's
Mm.
hard for us to get any on anything. They don't want privacy coins.
Right. They're
It's
delisting them all
literally
now too.
impossible. Yeah,
Yeah.
and well, yeah,
But why
they're
is
listening.
that? Can I speculate? That's because they have a centralized element. They have a point of attack. They have people that can be held accountable because they have a centralized element, right?
Right.
So they're concerned about regulations, right?
Right. Exactly.
How else
Yeah.
do you
And
explain that? That's why
anything
they
that
have
was launched
KYC.
as an ICO run by a company has a single
Ah,
point of failure. And
right.
that's basically everything in the crypto space right now, aside from the coins that we support and
Hmm.
a few others, right? Like there really are
So
not very
why?
many who are launched
So w-
correctly.
so we didn't have an ICO, and we chose to go through a distributed system that instead of having an ICO, there's a group of founders that are distributed and are acquiring more of that, which is another decentralized element, right?
So the
Can you explain
idea
that?
is that the founders who put effort to making this platform a possibility, it makes sense for them to get a little extra at the beginning, right? And that allows them to also help push the platform forward. It was a group that was worldwide, just like the development team. So the founders are all over the world. There's no single company, there's no any sort of single entity whatsoever. The founders were given only an opportunity. If they didn't take advantage of that opportunity, they got nothing. So as we've seen already, there are what, two or three founder accounts that have never been used. Now, those people put effort into helping the project at the beginning and they got that founder account opportunity, but they didn't do anything with it, so they didn't get anything, right?
I keep
And so
forgetting
that,
about that. Yeah, right,
right,
right.
yeah. So we have proof
One lost
already
one, and the other
that
don't
we've
even
had,
actually mint.
right, that we've had multiple founders, at least two of them, that have not ever mint. Like they've never
Right.
minted. So which means that it proves the fact that it was just an opportunity. If they didn't take advantage of that opportunity, that's on them. It's really just an opportunity that was given to certain people who helped get the project to where it is. And that's that. If they took advantage of that opportunity, yes, they get more at the beginning until we hit the level 10. And then they become just like any other account. And that is something that The original model wasn't like that, but now that is what the direction that we are going. The founder rewards will eventually be put to nothing, and they will be identical to any other account. And that was one thing that I designed in the beginning that I wish I hadn't, but it is what it is, right? So we're modifying that. The only reason we can't do it immediately and just drop it immediately is because of the fact that the Cora forgers started at levels 1 through 5, and the founders started at 0. So it wouldn't be fair to just make it 1-to-1 at this point. So we have to work on it slowly. Until then, we've reduced the founder reward to 3%, and that's as low as we can go for right now. And then as time goes on, we will reduce it further. I also have a plan for a potential method to form a decentralized development fund from a portion of the existing additional founder rewards. So I have a plan for that. I'm still working out the design for that, and we will go from there. But it relies upon the voting system as well, and it relies upon creating a new type of AT that will essentially pay out the developers automatically from a fund that it gets created from that percentage. So, but we will work on that as time
So
goes on. But yeah.
so
So
are you saying not to look at the founders as a dev tax?
Right, it is not. Yeah, no, it is not.
Well,
It's just
you used some great verbiage a second ago, a decentralized development fund, right? So rather
right.
than maybe Jason and Kat or just one or two or three accounts having a larger reward, it was decided to have more of us that have a even more decentralized distributed access to that kind of pool, right? So
Yeah,
there you go, more
it was meant
decentralized
to in
distribution.
the beginning to help by way of each individual contributing towards the development of the platform. Now, as the time
Yeah,
goes on, we can
empower it in their own
automate
way.
this. Yeah, we can automate this further and make it so that like the percentage from the that was supposed to go to the founder pool goes to an AT that then gets a vote and gets people added to it based on their contribution and a vote, and then it says automatically pay out these people every week, right? So that's the idea that I'm thinking about now, and that will potentially be implemented in the future if it works out the way that I think it will and can stay completely decentralized and so forth. But the idea is that, yes, the founders are the people who help the platform become live. They deserve a little extra for doing that. In the beginning, they will get that, and then it will level out. And they will become just like anybody else. They'll have the recognition of the founder stamp, but that's it, right? So that was the whole idea, yeah.
so
Hey, one
re-
thing. Go
yeah,
ahead,
good.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh,
I've been
okay.
holding the mic. Go ahead.
So regarding the voting system, I would kind of want to see something like so you kind of talked about how you could vote in developers and then they can move up to being a developer
Right.
admin. I kind of want to see something like the develop people who get voted in as a developer can actually do like pull requests to
Well,
have our
anyone
like
can do pull requests anyway, right? Like, but
oh
yeah, the
yeah,
yeah,
but the our GitHub on Qortal, right? And
right.
then they would be directly marked as a developer on chain, and then the developer admins would also be marked as, and they could push directly to the Qortal chain without going through a GitHub and going on like our Qortal GitHub.
Well, we can't really do that, but I mean, we still have to make sure that the code base is like taken care of, right? So like a pull request will work a little differently on the decentralized Git. You can have a copy of the code on your name and a copy on the primary name that ends up getting utilized for the main code repo, right? So it'll still work very similarly to the way that Git works now. People can do pull requests. We can also track that information, of course, and we could say, you know, this is the proof that this person has been doing development, and then let it be voted in from there. Like, I don't think automating that is a great plan, because then someone could get into the group simply by doing a bunch of pull requests and so forth, and we don't know anything about that person. Like, they could potentially get in to the point where they could influence the platform, right? Like, and we don't want that to be done in an
Malicious.
automated fashion. So we want yeah, like we have to pay attention to the fact also that Qortal is extremely disruptive, and if some group wanted to, and there was a gateway for them to be able to do so, they could absolutely come in and try to get into a position to manipulate the platform, right? So we have to be careful with that kind of stuff and doing anything like that in an automated fashion. However, I do like the idea of potentially taking those submissions to the Git repo and using them to establish like a hierarchy for the payouts from the automatic from the AT, right? So the AT could then pay the people who've actually been putting work towards the development, and then the ones who, like myself, who do work in development in a different type of way that doesn't necessarily involve doing pull requests to the repo, could be voted in by the community, and how much of a percentage of that goes to like which accounts get which percentage of this based on what they're doing and the proof of what they're doing and so forth. Yeah. But I don't think automating like the ability to get into the dev group is a very great plan. Like we still need to have the human interaction. We still need to like be able to talk to these people and like, figure out if they're here for the right reasons and so forth. Like, and get activity is something that's really important, especially for the people who are in the dev admins. Like we need these people to be around. So doing it that way in an automated fashion could also lead to a point where people get into the dev admins and then disappear, right? And if that happens, it could get to a point where eventually we can't push auto updates, and we don't want to get to that position either. So
You can have
we need
a
to still have
vote to
like,
kick.
yeah, I mean that does exist already, right? Like it can happen, but it's like I just want to avoid that scenario coming to play at all. Like it can't be fully automated. It can't be fully automated. It has to be like there has to be some sort of decision making process with human minds being the ones to decide, and not just automated stuff from pull requests and so forth. Yeah.
Another
I see.
peer-to-peer
You can
element.
obviously put up a proposal if you think you have an idea that will work, and when the voting system is live, you put up that proposal and you can, oh, you disconnected. Okay, whatever. You can put up a proposal, and if you get that proposal passed, then there you go, right? Like, so it's not just me who's going to be making these decisions. It's never been, but it's not going to be me at all in the future. So it'll be anybody who can put up a proposal, get that proposal voted on. If it passes, it passes, right? So that's what it comes down to. So anybody with these ideas can definitely put them up in proposals and get them voted on. Like that's the whole plan of the future of Qortal. So yeah.
So if we can go back to one thing real quick, we've got some new marketing help here. So for the sake of conversation, on the topic of scalability, with QDN, right? If you could lead into this, there's a couple aspects here. How it's local, right? With how it's hosted, it's not actually hosted on the blockchain, and what is on the actual chain, how it's
Right.
actually downloaded. If you could explain that, like real quick, bit.
Yeah, so all of the data from QDN is on a node, right? So whichever node publishes it is the first node that has it. Then any node that views or follows it also has the data in encrypted form. Now, the encrypted form thing is kind of important too, right? So even if you're a following node and you follow everyone, even if you have your data set to storage policy all, and you literally store a copy of everything that's published on QDN, you only have an encrypted copy of everything published on QDN, unless you specifically click to view it. Once you click to view it, then it gets built and displayed to you and decrypted, right? So the only time you have data that's actually usable data is after you've viewed it. So that's a key thing for people to like just understand about how it works. Also, so the data is on your node, a hash of that data is stored on the chain so that the chain can then verify and secure that data so that it is only modifiable by the person that put it there. And now in the future, we'll also tie this into groups so that a group can actually own a name, and a group can also use group transactions and group approvals to make changes to the data so that you could say, I want 50% of this group to be able to say yes before a change to this website or Q app gets pushed out, right? So you can do the same thing like what we're doing for the auto updates for any sort of application or website on top of QDN once we get to that point. So we will have the option for groups to own data. We will also have the option for them to use group approval to make changes to the data. So that's really cool, especially for like things like where if you have a company or a group of people who wants to make sure that something doesn't get changed unless they all agree on it, that can happen. But right now it's one owner. So the owner of the name, the account that owns the name, is the only one that can publish data on that name. And that's just the end of it, right? Like there's nobody else who can modify that data. So if you don't own that name, you cannot change that data. And that's because the data is secured by the chain, right? So the data is originally local on whatever node is publishing it. It gets copied to whatever node accesses it in encrypted form. If they view it, then it gets decrypted on their machine and displayed to them. And it's ultimately scalable because you can choose which data you have on your node. So if you have 100 gigabytes available to dedicate towards QDN, you can decide, which names you're going to follow based on how big they are and which ones you actually want to support, and you can, follow whichever names you want, right? So it'll scale up infinitely because anybody can decide which data they support and which data they don't, and how much space they have available and how much space they want to make available and so forth. So
While never being there's no factor in this context related to chain bloating because it's not
no,
on the blockchain. Right.
right,
It's from one
exactly,
peer
yep.
to another.
There's one single hash file for each name that's on the blockchain, which is a super tiny, tiny piece of data. So it's not going to make the chain any bigger, like a really, really tiny amount bigger, especially with the archive methods that we're going to have in the near future. It really won't make any difference whatsoever. Like it's less data than a transaction. So yeah.
Anything else, folks?
I would like to ask, can we move conversation to present about some problems with usability?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Oh, well, we have lots of things built. I've been here for about a year, but when I try to use it, I have problems all the time. Like at the moment, I'm trying to upload the picture, it's taking extremely long. Then when I try to read the chat, it just doesn't update itself. I have to switch tabs to update it. When I try to access some QDN site, it doesn't load and stuff like that. I think it should work by default.
Yeah, okay. So there are a few different things that come along with that, right? So if your node is reliant upon outgoing connections only, and you only have, the default 16 peers, it's going to be a lot more difficult at this point for your node to obtain any data from QDN. And now that's because we don't have a firewall hole punching method right now, so nodes cannot directly connect to the data node that has the data. They have to go to whatever node is connected to them and relay from there to get the data. Now, if you have port forwarding enabled on your publishing node, that makes it a lot easier for anyone else to obtain the data because they then can connect directly to that node, right? Now, in the future, we will develop a hole punching method so that you can connect directly to whatever node has the data and get the data that way. As far as your issues with QChat goes, yes, we're aware of that. The primary cause of that, I believe, is the fact that we're reliant upon unconfirmed transactions, and sometimes those transactions don't necessarily relay around the network as well as they should. Also, we are going to be adding the QChat protocol, which will make that a whole hell of a lot better. I don't know if you were here for the time when we changed the presence transactions on the trade portal into the presence protocol. But if you were, you would have seen the massive difference that that made, and that also made a lot less processing on each node. So your issues sound like they could be somewhat related to Qortal and also somewhat related to your setup. I don't know what your computer specs are like. I don't know what your port forwarding situation is like. I don't know what your internet connection is like, and so forth. So there's like a lot of factors that go into to like the overall functionality and how things are going to like look and feel on each computer. But ultimately, with the QChat protocol, the issues on QChat should be dramatically reduced. It'll make messages a lot faster. It'll make messages relay a lot more quickly. It'll make all of those kinds of issues like pretty much go away. Also, the QChat database will then make it so that you can keep the messages as long as you like. So then you won't have to worry about them disappearing. So we can actually use it as a desktop messaging platform. As far as the getting data from QDN, that really relies upon which nodes you are connected to and which nodes they are connected to and which ones have the data, right? So if it's a site that doesn't have very many available nodes, or a site that was published recently and only has the publisher node that does not have port forwarding enabled, that's going to make it a lot harder for the rest of the network to actually get that data, because then they're reliant upon a relay node that's connected to the data node, and they are connected out from the data node into the relay node, and then the relay node allows incoming connections and relays the data. So it's like the people publishing the data need to be aware of that. And until we have a firewall hole punching method that'll allow direct connection no matter what, you have to be aware of the fact that when you publish data, if you don't have port forwarding, then nobody can connect directly to your node to get that data, and they have to go a roundabout way to get it, right? So those kinds of issues are mostly reliant upon the way that the data was published and how many follower nodes that data has and how those nodes are set up. So a solution for right now is to increase your max peers and make sure that you have port forwarding enabled. Then I guarantee you'll have a much better experience on getting data from QDN. That will make a massive difference. I have on my laptop 150 connections, and I never have issues getting data. As far as publishing data, there is no uploading. So I don't know what you're talking about as far as like what you're having problems with there. Like, if you're talking about just publishing it and it's taking a while to publish, I have not seen that issue myself if you're talking about QChat. So, but I haven't published a whole hell of a lot of pictures there. So, if you want to give me more details on exactly what is going on there, we can like look into it. We are aware of a few little bugs on QChat and we will be taking care of those. But ultimately, your issues with QDN probably boil down to the fact that you don't have enough peers right now because of the way that the relay stuff has to work. So if you increase your peers and make sure you have port forwarding, you will definitely see a massive improvement on the performance of obtaining data from QDN. The other QChat stuff, once the QChat protocol goes live, I guarantee you, like all of that stuff will be completely gone. Yeah.
Sorry, Jason, I just have a question for the person that tried to publish an image, for example, on QChat. Did it eventually go through, um, or did it never go through?
Most of the time, I just abort it. I just switch tabs or something because I don't want to wait for like 10 minutes, 15. I don't know.
Okay, all right.
I've not seen them ever take that long. Can you like maybe record a video and like, because we need to see like more information and try to come down to what's actually causing this to happen. So
Yeah, because normally what I've seen is 10 to 20 seconds usually it takes.
I just tried to upload one picture and it didn't upload and it didn't report anything. After that, uploading image thing was up there, and just disappeared and nothing happened.
And there was no error message or anything, right? It just disappeared?
yeah,
I didn't see it this time.
Okay. Maybe it went through, but it's just the WebSocket hasn't picked up on the message. But yeah, if you could record a video and post it, I'll take a look at it.
thank you, sir. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, the QChat protocol, QChat database, and the changes to allow direct connection to nodes that have the data will make a big difference as far as all this stuff is concerned. Until then, increasing your max peers will definitely make a difference as far as obtaining data from QDN. If I have a node that only has 16 connections relying upon outgoing connections only, and I try to obtain data, it definitely takes a lot longer than if I were to, say, have my laptop with 150 peers. It gets to me a lot more quickly and a lot more reliably. So until we have these other improvements, making sure you have port forwarding and making sure you have a larger number of max peers will definitely improve your experience on QDN.
Hey, Jason, didn't you say that you had something else that we could do? For example, one of my friends only having access to Wi-Fi and not the router. Wasn't there something you said that we could do in those kind of situations to better enhance
So
the
what I've done
performance?
for a few people is to basically allow them to have incoming connections by way of a proxy that I set up. It's not,
Okay.
it's not ideal, but it definitely works. I have 2 people that are using it right now. I just basically have a server in the cloud that I have that is set up to allow incoming connections on whatever port I set. Then I give them an account and an SSH command, and they create a reverse port forward that then allows connections coming to that server on whatever port to be forwarded to their node, right? So, I mean, it's not really like an ideal, like long-term solution, but it's definitely a solution for right now. If people only have outgoing connections, I can give them a way to obtain incoming connections by way of a proxy, right? And that's essentially the same concept of the firewall hole punching that we're probably going to implement. It's going to be something very similar to the way that SSH port forwarding works. So you can connect out to the node and then allow an incoming connection through that outgoing connection. So it's a proxy to allow incoming connections. So yeah,
Is that
that's the idea. Yeah.
is that something that we can work up a wiki page for, or are you kind of
I
limited in
mean,
kind of the
I
capacity of that?
could, I mean, I could offer it as a service. I can't like allow a bunch of people to use
Okay.
it for free,
There is a
right? Because
bottleneck
I'll have,
to it. Okay.
yeah, like, so I mean, I could offer it as a service if somebody wanted to pay me a small amount to have like that proxy incoming connections. Like, I could do that, but right now I'm just doing it for a couple people because I wanted to see if it would make a difference, and it absolutely makes a difference. Like, they are able to use Qortal a lot better when they have more peers. Like, really, right now, when it comes down to a lot of the stuff, especially QDN, more peers on your node is going to make a massive difference, and incoming connections being allowed is going to make a massive difference. So those kind of things right now are really important for anyone who can to allow 12392 port by default into their node. Like, that's like something that's really important for the overall health of the network at this point, especially because if we have a lot of people relying upon outgoing connections and not enough people allowing incoming connections, then that could potentially be a problem in the future. So for now, we want to make sure that if you can, then you can allow incoming connections. If you can't, then I can potentially offer this as an option for people right now. It does rely upon me having a server running, so it's not ideal. It's not completely decentralized either. It's just a way for them to have incoming connections. Now, it doesn't make it so their node doesn't work if they don't have it. It just allows them to have incoming connections. So their node will work the same way if my proxy is down without the incoming connections. But yeah, so I could potentially offer that as a service. I think some people might take me up on that offer.
Yeah,
So
we could do like
it
a
also
fund
works.
possibly and sponsor people sort of like that.
Yeah, it also works for people on a VPN. And so they can be
Mm,
on a VPN and allow incoming connections through my proxy through the VPN. So they don't even have to give their real IP address to my server, right? So yeah, for people like that who are super privacy focused and they still want to be able to have
privacy.
incoming connections,
Privacy,
it's a
sir.
good idea. So yeah,
It's a
privacy,
good word.
privacy.
Privacy.
I like it. Yeah, privacy.
Add that to the
Um,
glossary.
but yeah, so if people like that would like to have incoming connections, like say they are publishing a bunch of data on QDN and they want to be able to get that data out there more easily, then that could definitely be something that could help them. The only thing that I'm not 100% sure about right now is if that that proxy connection will be relayed to the network as far as being a location for that data, because I think it would actually come from the node that published it regardless, because the network's not aware of the proxy, right? So I'm not sure how much that will actually make a difference
Is
on
this
a larger
limited
scale.
to a
Yeah.
US based user base,
No.
right?
No.
So anyone in the world could benefit from this service
Yeah.
if interested.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah, and I have
fascinating.
servers in like 6 different countries, so I could, have one that's closer to them if they want it or whatever, or in another location or whatever they want, Yeah.
Hey, a question about so Q apps. Um, Anyone who's interested in building on that. So this first iteration, I guess two parts. This first iteration, is it going to allow what's the capacity? What are the limitations for people who want to build freely? And number two, what languages?
Okay, so when we get the initial iteration of QApps, the primary language is going to be JavaScript. So JavaScript, HTML, CSS, that's going to be like the main way of building applications on top of QDN right now. Now, any sort of client-side language will work potentially, right? So, but the primary one is going to be JavaScript. And once we have this, it's literally anyone who can do whatever they want. So they can publish just like they could with a website. They could publish a Q app that uses any of the existing Q app functionality and allows them to do whatever they want, right? So ultimately, it's probably going to come down to the fact that we need to publish a few demos. And from there, then the people can take those demos and use the authentication methodology from them, or whatever that they want from that, and then use that to build their own Q app that does whatever else, right? So we have some documentation that Cal published on Q apps and what the functionality will be. So developers can start taking a look at that and seeing what they will potentially be able to build once it does go fully live. I expect the initial iteration potentially around a month. I'm not going to say with 100% certainty that that's going to be when it actually happens, but it's looking about that right now. So that's awesome. We will potentially be building a publishing platform for videos or posts or whatever, and that will most likely be probably one of the first Q apps. So like a video publishing platform or potentially like a blogging platform, something like that, right? So people can go and publish a post without worrying about publishing a whole website. So I think that'll be really cool. And then anyone can also take any existing Q app and publish it on another name. Then they can also take that and modify which data it shows. So say I wanted Croetics video service, but I only wanted to show videos that I post or videos that you post or videos that a few other people post. I could then say to the Q app, only show this, and this name, and it'll only publish videos that those people published, right? So it's really cool.
Whitelist.
Yeah, so you can take and you can clone and you can modify, you can rebrand, you can take it and make it show whatever you want, make it not show whatever you want, and make it your own, right? So we publish QTube, and it shows all of the videos published by anyone, right? And arranges them however it decides to arrange them, right? Someone could take that, call it XTube, and make it play whatever videos they wanted from whatever names that they wanted only, or they could make it play all of the videos in a different way and show it in a different way, whatever they wanted, right? So it's
Right.
completely flexible and completely awesome, and it doesn't rely upon any sort of hosting or servers or DNS or domains or any of that shit that comes along with the internet. And it's really it's absolutely the future, man. And then you can take that, you can brand it, customize it, do whatever you want with it. Then you can sell it all at once on the names market to someone else who can pick up where you left off without changing anything. And
Right.
yeah, dude, it's fucking brilliant. Like you could
So
have an entire brand built on that name and then sell it to someone else who can pick up where you left off without changing shit. It's fucking great. Yeah,
right. So they get the name, they get the database, they
all of it.
get
Yeah, they even get the
anything
followers.
associated with that. Right.
Yeah.
Or if someone just wanted to sell the name alone, they could also go about that means separately. Right. It could be everything under the name or just the name separate.
Well, it depends on
Right.
what's on that name, right? Like it's everything
Right.
on the name. So when you sell a name,
There'd be a
control of
versatile
that
solution.
name
Yeah.
goes to that person. So if you wanted to separate things out, you would need to use multiple names for that. And you will definitely be able to link from one name to another. You'll be able to post links like Qortal ://website/ asset, whatever, right, in QChat or whatever, or on a website, whatever. So you can do that. You'll be able to do that. So you can use multiple names. You can then have your primary name that has just a website on it or whatever, and then a link to another name that has a Q app on it or whatever, right? So, and then you can post individual links to either like individual assets, videos, music, whatever, on Q apps, or I mean on Q apps, QDN websites, or QChat. Doesn't matter. Like, so it's, since there's an underlying infrastructure there, you can link to anything on it, right? So it's pretty brilliant. Yeah. Like, I'm super stoked. Like, this is going to be amazing. Yeah.
There was one key term there that we just use, whitelist. With that in mind, the question always gets raised about QDN, right? How are we going to
Yeah.
deal with the list of contents as well as, like a YouTube for kids type version?
Right.
Can you kind of explain what those possibilities might be?
Yeah, so when we add some more to the groups functionality, you'll be able to have a group that has an automatically applied whitelist or block list, right? So then if you want your kid to be only able to see certain content on whatever Q app exists, and you know that, this name and this name and this name are content that you don't want them to see, then you can just block those, right? And you can already do that on an individual level, but in the future, it'll be like a group that you can join that has this and this whitelist or this and this block list. And you can then apply that automatically by joining that group. So then you could say, like, say people who are in China and they wanted to follow the quote unquote laws of China, they could do that, right? Like, they could make sure that this one group follows all of the quote unquote laws, and then they could have their accounts all joined to that group, and they wouldn't have to worry about any of the shit, right? So it's flexible. It's able to be applied to any scenario, and you can absolutely make it simple and straightforward. We will have that option. Like, you will probably even have like a site where you can go and say, like, I want to customize for this and this and this, and you click a button and it'll throw you in the correct groups, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, like, that's the idea behind Q apps, is that you can do all these things that you can do with the API, but you can do them with an application that makes it a lot easier. So then anything that you want to see happen, you can just make it happen with a Q app. So yeah, it's going to be really cool. I also like have thought of the concept of like a Q app that grabs data from the internet on a regular basis and then publishes it on QDN, so that that data can then be accessible to Q apps on QDN, right? So then you could say, like, have an application that runs on a computer and it sits there and it grabs the price of Litecoin in US dollars and it publishes it somewhere on QDN. So then anybody, say like an Explorer Q app, could then take and grab that information from QDN without having to reach the internet. So you have a computer just sitting there doing that publishing for you, and then you have a live price feed that's on QDN and not worrying about the internet at all, right? So yeah, so we have things like that that can take place too. Ultimately, all of the data needs to be on QDN because we're not allowing direct access to the internet. So anything you want to see that's part of your Q app, anything that you want to have as part of your website, needs to be published on top of QDN. Yeah.
So traditional internet traffic can view and access through gateways onto Qortal, but we're not building support to go the other way,
Right.
basically, is
Nope,
what I'm
we
saying.
are not, because the whole idea, right, is to replace the internet. It's not to
Yeah.
improve the internet. It's not to make the next generation of the internet. It's to replace it and make a better
Or
version of it.
alternative might be a more
Yeah,
neutral
alternative.
term.
Yeah, better. Yeah,
Yeah,
better is
like
a better word. Yeah.
get a YouTube replacement. Let's say YouTube alternative. I don't know.
Yeah, it's an
A little
alternative.
smoother,
Yeah, it's a better
maybe.
alternative. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the idea. So, yeah, if we were to allow, say, Q apps or QDN websites to link directly to the internet, that would defeat the whole purpose, because then any of those links could potentially be down. And
Right.
stuff on QDN can't really be down unless there's only one peer for the data, and that peer is offline or doesn't have incoming connections at this point. But in the future, it'll be like, if that node's not online, that's the only way. If they have only one peer for the data, but I have 2 data supernodes running right now too. So by default, everything that gets published on QDN gets published on my 2 data supernodes. And I know that there are at least a couple of others who are running data supernodes too. So by default, you're getting at least 5 copies of your data that gets published on QDN. Now, if your publishing node still has an issue getting that data out to the rest of the network, then that's a separate problem. Now, you have to have incoming connections allowed for that to happen easily. If you don't, then it takes more effort, but it'll still happen. And what we're going to do for QApps is a little different than what we're doing for the websites. So right now, the websites, when you go to them, you click it and it shows the loading thing. And while it's downloading files, it's showing that loading thing, right? We are not going to do that for QApps. For QApps, we're going to have a download button, and you'll click the download button, and then once the Q app is ready, then you can launch it. And I was thinking that that might be a decent idea to add to the websites as well, so that you can not have to sit there, wait for it to load and so forth. You can just click download on the ones you want to see, and then come back and check it in a few minutes. And so you
It
don't have
works
to
in the
sit there.
background.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So I think that that's something that we're gonna add to both of them as an option, but it'll work by default that way in Q apps. So you want to use an app, you download it just like you would like on a centralized fucking whatever the store or whatever, right? You want an app, you download it, right? So we're doing the same thing on Q apps. So you'll go and it'll be like the websites plugin where you can see them all. And then you'll have a download button on the ones that you want to use. You download it and then you access it, and it's going to be instant, right? So you don't have to worry about the loading screen and people being concerned that stuff is not getting to them or whatever, right? Like, because ultimately, the data will get to you unless it's literally one node that has that data and whatever. Like, even if you have 16 peers, it might take a little while, but the data will get to you, right? It'll get better as time goes on, and if you have more peers, it's going to obviously be better. But unless there's one peer and that data never got to any of the supernodes or whatever, and it's just that one peer only, the data will get to you, right? Now, we have some other improvements on the back end of QDN as far as data transmission goes and so forth that are being worked on. So it will get better at the core level too. But yeah, so yeah.
Brilliant. It's 12 o'clock. Anybody else have questions or things? We can wrap this up.
You've been here for a while, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, now you
Hi.
show up.
Yeah. To what do
Speaking of
we
data
owe
supernodes,
this?
you have a lot of hardware on standby, don't you, sir?
Goddamn right. I've been waiting for years with
So
it.
you can already set them up as data supernodes,
No,
right?
I don't know that. I've only been telling every person who represents to please tell me when it's ready.
Okay, well
Mhm.
it's been a thing since QDN went live, but it hasn't
That
really ever
includes
been like
Cal,
talked
so I
about.
did not
Yeah.
drop that ball.
Okay, so all you
I
have to
wanted to
do.
put my petabyte online as well.
So all you have to do is this.
Hmm.
So in
It's a
settings.json, here,
JSON.
I'll
Yeah.
type it out. Yeah, hold on.
Yeah, please.
To enable data supernode.
I just have one reservation with that idea. You don't know what you're supporting.
Yeah, dude, but like I said, everything is encrypted.
Oh,
Yeah.
the
So
data?
you're
Until you open it.
only keeping encrypted copies of it unless you specifically
Yeah.
view it.
Yeah,
right?
this has been around the block a few times. This isn't the first time people have done a storage thing, and that
Okay, but if
concern
someone
always comes up.
confiscated your hardware and managed to gain
They couldn't
access
get
and then decrypted it, you saying if the agencies kicked in the door and grabbed your hardware and it could then click and decrypt?
They would
I
have
don't
to
know.
know how to do it through
I mean,
Qortal. I mean, but
it's
Yeah.
possible.
yeah, it's possible.
That's
yeah.
my reservation, kind of. But I hear you.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm
It's
not worried about
encrypted
it.
till opened.
Yeah.
If we get as big as WikiLeaks, just start emptying your hard drives.
All right, or just don't follow certain names. There you go. Like,
Yeah, there you
but
go.
I mean, but this is for now, dude. There's only like not even 10 gigs total on QDN right now, so it's like, yeah, we need more data supernodes just to make sure the data gets around the network
Well, I got you.
more easily. Yeah. Okay. So this right here, yeah, storage policy. Oh, that's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Nice. Okay. How do I specify the drives? Because I have like 5 drives.
Well, you can set your data path. If you I don't know if we can do multiple data paths. So what you would want to do is probably set up your 5 drives to act as one.
And then
In
mount
whatever
them
way,
again.
in whatever way you want to do that. Like you can use what's it called?
I already did that once. I merged
okay.
them and then
Well,
I
just
mounted them. And then I talked to Cal and he said maybe better for them to be independent. So I reformatted them independently again.
I mean, well, if Cal said that, then he must have some sort of plan. But as far as right now, as far as what I'm aware of, you can only point to one data location. So yeah, I mean, if you want to have that data location have all 5 drives or whatever, then you're gonna need to like set up some type of RAID or fuck, I cannot remember the name of that. R pools. What is an R pool? What is the format type for R pool? God damn it. I forget. But there's a way you can do it. There's multiple ways you can do it. Like, yeah.
So it just finds the drive where the core is?
Well, yeah, by default it goes in. So it depends on the operating system too. So by default, if you're running a Windows machine, it will go to app data local Qortal data. If you set in the settings.json data path, then it'll go wherever you tell it to, right? So yeah, there and in the Windows config file on the second config file in app data local, you can see it has data path, wallet path, user path, or whatever. All those paths there, you can modify those paths to whatever you want, right?
Where is that?
So yeah, in settings.json for Windows by default. So the other ones are default blank by default. So wherever you have the Qortal folder is where the data folder will be as well. So yeah.
I'm just waking up. I'm sure I'll get lost, but that's enough to get me started.
Yeah,
Thanks.
on Windows, it's in settings.json already. Those paths are already there, so they will point to the locations, and you can modify them.
Okay.
Any other machine, you can still add data path and set it to whatever you want.
Oh, so my core doesn't have to be on the same drive that I actually holding the data. I could pick any one of the
Right.
empty drives.
Right. Yeah.
All right, then I'll roll that way, and then I'll figure out how
And
to
yeah,
merge
you
them.
can throw your DB on this drive and throw your data on that one or whatever, right? What I would do is potentially set up my data disk as maybe a RAID 10 with those 5 drives, so you have both striping and redundancy, and then throw all of the data on that, so you have like a really nice data setup.
Well, they've been there for 2 years. I have quite a bit of personal data on one of them now. I think I'll do it with 4 of them for now.
There you go. Then you could do a RAID.
Just
no, RAID 10 on 5. Yeah, RAID 10 is still good. RAID 5 is what I was thinking about with the 5 drives, but yeah, either way, RAID 6, RAID 5, RAID 10, all good. Yeah.
That's
storage rentals. Okay, so storage rentals, Lutz. The only time we're gonna need storage rentals is if you're talking about private data. So we're not quite there with private data. That's not going to be that far down the line. There are a few things that I'm concerned about when it comes to private data as far as selling the name and how that private data will be transferred. So that's one thing we're trying to figure out. But as far as storage rentals go, like that's going to be the data market, and the data market will come into play as soon as the private data comes into play. And so you'll have the ability to, basically rent however many nodes that you want your data to be stored on. And then we'll have to have another method of tracking the reliability of these nodes and publishing that data somewhere for people to see potentially on the data market as well, so that you can, choose nodes that are within your range of how active you want them to be and so forth, and how they've previously held data well and whatever, right? Like the uptime and so forth is important with that kind of shit. So we'll have to find some way to modify or to monitor that and then to publish that data somewhere. So it might be a little bit of an effort to get that to happen, but the data market will be straightforward at first. People will be able to set the price they want for however much data they want to share, right? Make available, and then someone else can rent that data space from them and say, now I have 2 copies of my private data. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a feeling that there was a working model or there was something going on because Blockchain 7, I've been helping him a lot lately. And he had mentioned that someone had told him he could be a super node. And I was like, we
That's
had
just
that
a nickname
term
I'm
coined
giving
for a
the
thing.
storage policy all. Yeah.
Oh, no,
storage
I
policy
know.
all.
I know. That's why I'm like, I've been sitting here with 5 drives. I've been like,
I
guys.
didn't think to mention it to you for some reason. I set up 2 or 3 data supernodes right now. So there should be by default at least like 5. So when you publish something on Qortal, you get 5 redundant copies by default, and then if you set up another one, it'll be like 6 now. So yeah, the more people we have running like that, the better. But obviously, like if people are concerned about what data they have on their computer and whatever, they need to be also realizing that all of that data is encrypted. So unless they're viewing it, they're not seeing it. Like it's not ever put together. So you're not necessarily supporting one person or another by having storage policy all. You're just trying to support the overall network. So yeah.
Well, I know where it goes. I don't have to be responsible for it.
Right.
Horse porn. I'm serious. I'm not kidding. When I ran a Wares site on the IRC, man, these dudes moved in and just started saying, where do you even get horse porn? Where does it come from? I mean, other than
IRC?
horses.
No.
I mean, we might know someone that knows all about that.
Yeah.
So,
Fucking
yeah.
Dumb.
That's what happens. People will store horse porn. And that's okay.
Yeah. Oh well.
Any
whatever.
other thoughts?
Yeah. No, I don't know. Any other questions?
Some great
I'm
things.
just like, I'm stoked about where we are right now as far as development goes, and I'm stoked about where we're going to be in the next couple months. So like, it's really time for people to start getting interested in what we're doing here. And I think that as soon as we have like even a simple like blog platform or a simple video publishing platform, it's going to go like really fast from that point on, because especially if we have my method of anonymous accounts through the gateway, because then people will be able to just use it through a gateway without setting up anything, and then they'll get involved in the community and set up their node and have the abilities to everything else later. So yeah.
Right on.
But
I'm just happy to have you here. I don't have any questions.
yeah, we're gonna do this every week now. So
Just a little think tank.
Good. This is officially, by the way, the first time he's spent any length of time in here since we've started.
Let's
yes,
go.
it's true.
And we can vote on changing the time if we need to, or just have a open space. So
Yeah, like I just wanna, because there's so much going on that it's really hard for people to kind of follow along.
yeah, you've answered a lot of my questions that I haven't asked. So
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Do you have any other questions? Or
not at the moment.
yeah, Lutz is what's coming next. Q apps, man. That's what's coming next. Q apps.
Yep.
That's what's next.
Sean, do you want to take lead on recording these? Is that something you might be able to
Whatever you like.
facilitate?
I'm still paying for StreamYard.
I don't know if you have. Well, we don't even
you
really
need to,
need
you
that.
need to
I
cancel.
mean, we have
No.
OBS.
Yo,
Yeah,
No,
so-
I'm recording right now.
You
We're
need to
streaming.
stop. You need to stop using StreamYard, man. Like, don't waste your money.
Yeah, and
Did
I've got
you-
about
Honestly.
Oh no! I
there's-
only get
there's-
StreamYard for them so that we could put it all
Oh.
in one little group and all.
Or
Yeah,
you-
that. We could
There's,
do it
there's a free
ourselves, but-
alternative. That's what I'm trying to tell you, man. There's a free alternative. You should.
Okay.
You should, yeah, bro.
So was this actually all recorded, whether we realized it or not?
yes, it was.
No, only since I came in. I was streaming all night.
No, it's been. Hold on, hold on,
Kick me
Where
out.
do
hold
you
on,
stream, bro?
hold on, guys.
Hold on.
It's been recorded for 2 hours and 8 minutes and 43 seconds. 44.
Oh,
Oh, nice.
45.
Okay, cool.
46.
So then,
Recording
awesome.
it.
Somebody was paying attention. Love it. All right.
Let's go.
So yeah, I think there was some good stuff that was touched on there. So I think that will be helpful to get out. I think we'll publish it whenever you.
Yeah, let's put this on our YouTube and wherever
I would
else.
like to know what the free StreamYard alternative is.
Yeah,
Oh, Video
definitely.
Ninja.
Video Ninja, thank you. I'll
Video
look it up.
Video.ninja. It's made by a dude named Steve Seguin. He's the goat.
Okay.
Yeah, bro.
It's a little more open source.
Who is
It has
this?
so
Who
much.
is it that recorded this?
This was Co.
I think coded. Yeah.
Co. Oh, my guy Co.
Hey, brother.
Love it.
Yeah. Good shit.
Great.
So yeah.
Yes.
I think that's it. I don't know. Like, I just kind of wanted people to understand that we're at this point where we need more users. We're also at the point where I'm realizing that users don't understand a lot of things. So it's really like I'm trying to make it as easy as possible to be able to access things through a gateway, at least to get them started. But at least the back end is still completely decentralized so that they can access through a gateway, download the account that gets created when they do that, and then access it through the UI once they get their node set up. So I think that will be pretty good. And I've talked with the dev team about that, and we're going to make sure that that can happen. So yeah, I think that will help with adoption a lot. Yeah.
Yo, Croatic. Remember that crypto mindset reset you did with Rice TV?
Yeah.
Do you remember that weird looking place we were talking?
Yeah.
That's Video Ninja, bro.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
my guy.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, bro.
Nice. Is that what? Let me look at that.
Once we get that implemented with QApp, we'll be good to go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, that'll be cool. I also, yeah, like, so then we could have streaming and so forth, right? Like, how does that, is that, what is that written in?
What? The
Video
Video
Ninja?
Ninja?
Yeah.
Probably just JavaScript, maybe. I think. Let me check
If
the
it's
GitHub.
JavaScript, then it can
That would
be
be ideal.
immediately. Yeah, that's ideal. Yeah. If it's JavaScript, then we can basically turn it into a queue app immediately.
I'm
Yeah.
just finding the GitHub.
Yeah, for anybody that
right
wants
now.
the URL, it's vdo.ninja.
Yeah, I just got to it.
Yeah.
Hold on. I want to see what the back end looks like. The only thing that I would be concerned about is if they're doing WebRTC, then they'll have
Oh,
to have the IP
peer-to-peer.
address, and the
Yeah,
IP
it's all
address is not like given to a queue app, right? So that would be the only thing where we'd have to figure that out and how that's gonna take place. But yeah, like yeah.
Here's the GitHub. I'll check it in the VC chat. But yeah, bro, I love it, man. I love Video Ninja. It's a really powerful tool. It uses
Nice.
peer-to-peer technology. You can set up your own turn server if you want, and it's like one of the quickest ways. Like I did a 9-hour stream just now on the 402, and I left the house and I made a room. I spun a room up between my computer and my phone, and then I had my phone in my OBS on my live stream. So while I was out and about, I was still, live engaging and shit. Yeah.
It's just like the smallest things, but when they're in open source or other things, it's like, oh wow.
Yeah.
Do we have
Does
any
anyone know where
documentation
James
now?
Corbett publishes
Yeah,
his
I'll get the
stuff?
docs. One sec, bro.
No,
Doc-
on the super nodes.
Oh,
Well,
Do
he
we have
has
any
a
documentation out on
let's
that?
see, he has Rumble and Odyssey. I think he also has a YouTube. I haven't thought to dig around and see if he's posted yet. I'll check YouTube if you want to check James Corbett.
Okay. I'm gonna smoke a doobie. Woo.
Yeah, since we're the thing.
I don't see it on
So,
his YouTube.
What's the plan on getting these super nodes to feed dynamic sites?
Dynamic? Yeah, no, we're not
Yes.
talking about that yet.
Oh, okay. Sad face. Just
That's
relax.
like that's a little bit further down the line. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's after mass adoption.
Yeah. We need we need first to get people really using this, and then we can start talking about stuff like that. But Cal has a method to do server side stuff, so like it is possible, but we're not focused there at all right now. Yeah.
If they come, we will build it.
All right. Wait, the other way around. Yeah.
So I don't know if we want to touch one more area. This one could take a couple minutes here. Jason, should we go over this today or reconvene as far as, our coin, just like Bitcoin, does not pass the Howey test. Howey test, however you want to pronounce that. I guess Howey.
Yeah.
Yeah, because basically, basically it has to meet all 4 points, and even Bitcoin did not, and that's a ruling by the SEC, right? So I don't know if we want to dive into that, but essentially, court itself and taking part in that is not an investment contract, right? It does not meet these 4 key points. And as we mentioned before, like on our Twitter, like
there
let me
should
pull
be
that up.
there should be no expectation of profit at all, because the whole idea is for court to power
profiting
the things
off of
on
others.
Qortal. Yeah, it's not about profit at all. It's more about.
So here's what I put. Here's what I put in the tweet. I put court does not pass the Howey test. Developers are decentralized. There's no pooling funds into a joint enterprise. The value of court does not depend on a third party. There was no ICO or pre-mine. There is no profiting off the work of others per se. And we use a new type of proof of work with a tiered block reward, and it's all peer-to-peer. Therefore, court equals a commodity, not a security. It's the same ballpark as
the
Bitcoin.
beginning, like sorry. I'd rephrase the beginning couple words, like instead of saying court did not pass the test, say
I don't like that
court
either,
doesn't
yeah.
court doesn't need to pass no test. It's above the
We don't
test, you know
offer
what I'm saying?
profit.
Kind of
I mean,
Yeah, that's a terrible argument.
like you
when
need to make a new
go
test
state, though.
for court, kind of
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like
And
You're
I don't
forgetting
like
the fifth
like,
prong of the
even-
test. does the SEC decide that it's a security?
Right? Yeah,
Right.
that's a good one too. Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
how
I
late
mean,
will they decide it's a security?
I think
I
we
mean,
could just ignore all that shit. That's what I think.
yeah.
That's
Well, really?
Yeah,
decentralization.
definitely. Like
They
disregarding
deliberately
any.
decided Bitcoin wasn't. And that speaks volumes. Yeah,
Mm,
It did
I
years
mean, are we
ago.
trying
Yeah.
to not be a security?
we're
of course
trying
not.
to not even care about securities. Yeah.
Sounds good to
Sure.
me.
Well, yes,
Yeah.
if it was a security, then technically SEC would have oversight and regulatory
Right. It seems
control.
logical that we would want to avoid that.
Yeah,
Right.
that's the whole point.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
not
Just
asking
make
Yeah,
how you
sure.
we're
guys
just
mean
bringing.
it's not
Okay,
a
so the
security.
reason that whole thing came up recently was in Twitter. Sayer G had
Yeah.
made a few tweets showing support, and then some of his followers that are Bitcoin maximalists. Basically, someone had accused us that hey, the leveling system looks like a Ponzi pyramid scheme, and this sure looks like it
Hold
passes
on.
the Howey
Power
test.
went off in one of the rooms. Hold on. I gotta go do something.
Yeah. So essentially, that's where this stems in more recent times. There was an accusation made by a BTC maximalist who didn't put any effort into looking into this, just quickly glanced at the leveling system infographic. And, you know, I think we're better than that, right?
Yeah.
Let's
Yep.
have a little due diligence before we go trying to cut other projects.
Well,
You
there
Well, I
are
know,
think-
two
it's a little
sides to it.
silly.
You want to separate yourself while simultaneously, should you get attacked by them, you want to have some type of thing to hand them. But I don't think
Yeah.
we want to really look toward that, do we?
Well, I think the
Yeah.
issue right now is that, the United States is very divided. We have multiple government agencies trying to increase their sphere of influence. And so it's
Huh.
kind of a race to see who gets to regulate. And the way
Right.
of the regulating is by enforcement.
Our
Ain't that the
philosophy
truth?
was to try and get things done before we were noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're really up against the test of times because look, we still don't know how Congress is going to really tackle the whole crypto topic that they're currently working on. But
Yeah.
nonetheless, like we've already talked about earlier, right? Qortal itself cannot be regulated directly. There's no central points of attack, no ownership of any sort, right? Intellectual property, proprietary aspects. So and then again, what jurisdiction? Now, of course, that's the same correlating argument as, like, say, Bitcoin. Oh, what jurisdiction? But that's where the only thing they can do is go after the individual who makes use of such, who engages in such so-called activity, right? So that'll
Well,
always
for
be the gray
Qortal,
area.
that's how it is. But for something like Bitcoin, there are many points of centralization, especially when businesses start using it.
Sure, right. The same could apply to Qortal though in that context.
Right.
So,
Right.
meaning what we were meaning though originally though was like as far as running a node or holding coin and deciding to do trades, that aspect alone they have no direct control over. Right now, if Qortal is going to be for all three areas of for the individual, for business, for nonprofit, and I guess a fourth area, third party projects that want to build on this platform. So for the business side of it, though, right? If they want to engage in commerce, then they'll have to use their own discrepancy with to what lengths they go to as far as being in compliance.
Yeah.
Are they going to
But that's
require
why we don't
KYC?
want
Are they
businesses,
going to
we
be
want
filing
protocols.
taxes? Well, we actually are going after everything, brother. We're going to be offering e-commerce solutions as well, a whole enterprise package, right? So basically, in the future, we can go business to business and offer an enterprise solution as far as the device, being able to host their own website, accepting various forms of crypto, and then there is a slight possibility we might actually have a third party that's willing to provide a gateway fiat service, right? But if people are going that route, then that's a whole different conversation as far as how to be in compliance versus just having like a like a Bitcoin ATM machine, right? But those damn things take 10%.
Yeah.
They're not that practical, So
Because they have to be compliant
certainly-
usually, right?
right, and I'm not personally claiming that I have all the answers or understanding, but that's the scope of my understanding so far.
Yeah.
It's like a vending machine. They're practical to the guy with the keys.
Yeah, but lo and behold, we are trying to build infrastructure that can, in fact, be for the business front as well, going beyond just hippies bartering and trading in the woods. And I mean that comically, but
Yeah.
in all good fun. But seriously, we should be able to offer the local business front. So, for example, if someone's got a car vinyl shop, just a random example, how can we offer them a solution? I mean, they love to have their own website. They love the idea of being able to have a gateway for traditional internet traffic, but it can't be one, jumping to one extreme where, hey, it's only crypto, and that whole onboarding process has to be pretty smooth. So we'll see how that evolves and gets conceptualized.
Right. And the important thing is people don't, they don't buy technology stacks, they buy products. And so, we're essentially building a skyscraper, and we have to dig a deep foundation to do that. And, we're starting to get past the ground floor. We're getting close to the point where people can come in and start doing stuff.
I just want shops in the skyscraper. That's all. I'm excited to get this super node going.
Yes, sir.
I just
Jason,
want to see
you're on mute.
things here for people to come to. Like people, Pig and I were talking, and I don't put as much prioritization on the voting, like almost to the level of sacrilege. He's like, "What?" Well, it's important to me. It's very important that every single person has a thing to say. But at this point, it's also equally important, I think, that we have things for them to find when they get here. Just features.
Yeah.
Call those
Absolutely.
punch.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see the node in place.
One key aspect, right? Once we get to having the payment systems, which is relying upon QApps, right? Greater scalability, other feature sets with the payment systems will allow two different areas to kind of evolve. One being the conventional type e-commerce service, as well as like information sites or whatever is related to subscription-based services, right?
Yeah.
So all of that's going to be a major factor in providing our coin more utility and adoption.
Right. And it's not just a payment system, it's also the accounting system.
Sure.
Of the identity. The fact that we are, Sybil resistant sort of by default really helps.
Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely.
I
One of those
had
things for
new-
developers to worry about.
heard rumor of us letting go of the unsigned block technique for obscuring. Are you still there, Jason? No. I just wanted to ask more about that. I wanted to know what we're doing with it, where we're going for security. I think you guys probably already covered that, didn't you?
We did basically, but I'd rather
I figured that if Luch is in here,
him
you had to be talking about
the
security at some
opportunity
point.
to articulate that.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with this guy.
Well, I wish I'd been here. I just woke up and picked my kid up from school.
Yeah.
Well, hey, it is recorded, so we'll get that posted
please.
on our social as soon as Mr. Ko gives us the file.
Yeah, I would like that very much.
Yeah, I don't want to try and answer that message on myself. Like I know what I'm talking about.
Oh, we already went through it. We went as far as we could go.
It's out there. Yeah.
I mean, you and I.
Lo and behold, this development team, man, how fascinating. They are literally, trying to foresee and map out everything. But of course, with the grand scope of everything, we got to give them a little grace. Just like this recent, historic stain chaw, right? That's the second ever. But the whole reason was because of an underlying Genesis bug, You ask Yopalas what he means. What's the unsigned block technique? Quick
Well,
is
we were
asking you
using
what
a technique
exactly-
in obscuring the text that went through, in which we would send data through on a block before it was actually used, and then when the blockchain used the block, then it was all filled with blockchain data rather than the message that you sent.
You're
But I
referring to
heard
the
there was a
chat
move
system.
to move toward being an actual privacy coin or having functions in there for that, and that they were removing that technique. So, I'm just catching it third party, really. I don't really know that much about it. Let me switch to the Discord so I can see what's going on.
Well, I do know that multiple different types of privacy enhancing features are on the roadmap, right? Private transaction
Yeah.
types, obscuring IP addresses,
Right.
you know, so on and so forth. And that's ultimately what you're referring to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
you know, if we're going
That
full on,
aspect's
then
definitely in the roadmap for sure. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely
I just
essential we
don't.
get those in before we're noticed.
I was just wondering why we'd just do away with it at all. I thought it was a rather ingenious technique to use the tools that we already had in another way. It's something that this group has been pretty good at so far. You know, with like the Discord bot blockers and all that jazz. It's not like we're the first ones doing it, but I'm saying that this group thinks that way. They think outside the box. So I was wondering why we would remove a technique that was so outside the box. That's all.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, if we're still talking about the same reference point, and it's not necessarily removing, but just adding in other options.
Ah,
Right.
okay. That's what I would do. I'd stack
There
on
will
it.
be both. Yeah, there's going to be both public and private transaction types available.
Right.
Now, where that falls in your particular meaning of dealing with unsigned block techniques, yeah, I'm not entirely sure. Quick
Well,
is
these are
asking.
from conversations I had had with Jason early on before we launched about how it was going to work. So I had that notion in my head how it might have changed or where it's going at this time. I have no idea though. And
Right.
that's try not to stay in confusion because people ask me questions and I don't want to give them bad answers. That's like the data node. I've been bringing that up lately because blockchain 7 asked me what a supernode was, and I said, "Well, wait a minute. See, I'm under the impression that they don't exist, right? So, are they using the name for something else now? Because as I understood, that was the data supernode, and I'm sitting here waiting on that. So, yeah, I don't know how to answer those questions if I don't have a definitive response. That's all. I'm just asking so I can help people in the future. Usually the reason I want to know, you know, like delegating is cool and all, but at some point I'm just the guy that's passing things to other people to answer.
So Quick
right?
is typing. He doesn't use his mic. He says, if you're referring to for data, we've been saying in chat for a long time that you can set that in the settings. Not sure how you missed that. That's been months.
What's
Looks
that?
like Croatics breakers went out.
Oh, how I missed it? Because I stay in this room. I come out when there's an issue. I come out to be part of large conversations, but for the most part, I focus here. And I rely on the people who come in here to talk to me. And, you know, what with the whole kerfuffle with Drew, I've
Jason will be
lost
here
one
in
of
just
those
a moment.
branches. I'm sorry?
Yeah. He said he should be on in just a second. He got tied up with a breaker that went out. Yeah, it is a blizzard. It's crazy. So rain check that. Any other questions, topics?
Oh man, I'm watching General.
Yeah, Qortal
No.
Tech, sir.
Yeah.
I think that was a really great recording, right? I'm glad we recorded it because we got a lot of good info out there. Yeah.
I am.
Yeah, no, I go in general periodically and I check the pins periodically, but for the most part, I just read the news and get in here. I don't have time to do a whole lot. I tend to stand here talking to people.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys record? I had recorded half of it by.
Oh, good.
Missed the other half.
Mr. Co has it all recorded apparently.
Yep.
Yes, sir. It
Okay.
will be released soon.
Yeah, man.
Yep, I've been saying that to Pig lately. I'm falling into
content.
quite a bit of
You hear me
ignorance
now?
because the
Oh,
focus. Yeah.
Fucking A, dude. One of my breakers just broke in my house, so that's fucking fantastic. I fucking hate dealing with the main power panel.
The weather's
I hate
crazy.
All nodes are Seifu.
Yeah, well, no.
You guys getting hit?
Only 2 bedrooms lost power, but that means I have to eventually shut power down to the whole house so that I can replace the fucking breaker because switching it off and on didn't do anything. So fantastic. Yeah.
Shit.
I'll stop by and bring you some hand warmers.
Yeah, you should stop by and bring me a breaker. I don't know.
Hey,
I might
Yopalex
and a UPS.
If you could answer this one real quick, please, Sean?
Yeah, the unsigned block technique that we were using for text transfer before, I had heard that was maybe going to be a thing of the past, and you were leaving in favor of something else.
The wait, what now? The what?
The technique that you use to send text and then utilize the blockchain later to send the actual data along, right? That was the same. We were moving toward something privacy oriented.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
He's
Okay,
talking
well.
about the transactions that are generated in the mempool only temporarily to show texts in QChat.
Right. So
QChat, yeah.
are we abandoning this?
Yeah. We are
In
no longer
favor
going to
of?
be using unconfirmed transactions at all.
Right.
We're going to be using a protocol. So just like if you remember in the beginning when we launched the trade portal, we had what were called presence transactions.
Sure.
They were actually transactions that like let the people know that the nodes were online for the trades, right?
Yes.
We have since replaced that with the presence protocol, which no longer uses transactions and is just a protocol that happens between the nodes, right? So it's the
Right.
same idea. We'll be replacing the QChat transactions with QChat protocol. So it'll be much faster. You won't have to worry about transactions in the mempool. You won't have to worry about those transactions not getting like relayed to nodes correctly and all that kind of shit. It all goes.
Oh, that was the
completely.
reason.
Yeah, so it's
I
going to be much
see.
faster. So transactions, right now, since it's relying upon transactions, it's not quite as instant as it could be, right?
Okay.
So with the QChat protocol, it'll be instant. It'll be not reliant upon the mempool. It'll be just much better, like overall, much better.
What kind of push are we making towards security?
Like, what do you mean?
Privacy coin.
Oh,
I hear a lot about it lately.
we're not focused on that yet.
Okay, good.
We have a concept to basically use this. I have an article that explains the different types of anonymous transactions that can take place on a chain, and
Yep.
there's one that basically utilizes a method of burning coins and then allowing you to spend those burned coins. And so we can do that method, and since we don't have change addresses or any of the change stuff, then we are actually in a lot better of a situation to use that type. So it'll be essentially like you'll be able to burn whatever number of coins, and then you'll be able to spend from that burned pile in a different amount. So it'll be like basically, you know how the ATs, whenever they come in from the null address.
Yeah.
It'll be like that. So you'll be able to basically burn them, and then they will be sent, and they will all basically come from the null address. Is the way that I see it working anyway. And then
Okay.
so nobody will know where the coin actually came from, right? Yeah.
Right.
Quick is asking, would you burn them and get them back
Right.
to another address? Cause the
No,
point of
just
doing
burn
that?
them and allow them to be spendable. Yeah. Just so you can't trace them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Says in
Gotcha.
other words, our
And
coins are
that's just
fungible.
and that's
What for
just
then?
one of
We don't have
so that's just
UTXOs. Yeah.
and that would just be one element of privacy enhancements that you have envisioned, right? Private transaction types versus obscuring IP addresses. What other areas are there to highlight?
I mean,
Or is that
that's
just that's
it.
kind of the meat and potatoes, right?
The relay of the transactions so that they don't come from your node or whatever they call that. I forget. What do
Okay.
they call butterfly effect? No, what was it fucking called again?
Dandelion.
Dandelion, yeah. Dandelion,
Dandelion.
that we'll be doing that, and then we'll be also doing the burn method of anonymizing coins. So
One
okay,
thing.
so you can burn it and then you can spend it. It won't come from your address when you spend it, right? So
Right.
it'll basically be coming from like the
From the
null
null.
account. Yeah.
Right.
So like it'll basically be like burning coins to an AT, and then from that AT you can spend, but it'll send from the null account like it does with the trades and so forth. So it'll be like everybody's sending from the null account, so you can't trace where the coins came from. Yeah, private send. Yeah,
Oh.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
private send. Yeah. So I'm not against privacy. I don't really necessarily like the chains that are totally private, and I do in certain cases, but they only have one use case, right? And
Right.
ours, like the idea of transparency in a lot of cases, because for things like, say you fund a project with a crowdfund, right? Then they do whatever they do, you can trace whether they're doing what they're supposed to be doing with the coin or not, right? So it's accountability, right? So in a lot of situations, transparency has a lot of really good use cases, and so I like the idea of having both. I like the idea of having our overall chain being transparent, because then people can see, who I'm sending funds to from the dev fund, and who, like, all those things, right? So they can verify that we're doing what we say.
Right.
But also having the ability to do private transactions is cool too, right? Like handing cash to my friend or whatever, right? So, like, yeah, and what Quick was talking about, where we don't have UTXOs, yeah, like, so we have a lot better way to do this because we don't have change in UTXOs and all that, right? So we can actually do this in a way that it'll make it completely anonymous. Like, if the coins are getting sent from the null account, there's really no way to tell who those coins came from at all. Like, so it's just like a black hole, like throwing coins into a black hole that then you can spend afterwards, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
That'll really help too, because we have a really polarizing crypto space where, for those that are privacy enthusiasts, it appears that the bulk of them will quickly dismiss a project like ours because of having a transparent ledger.
Right, but
So
we
once
also
we
have
can
support
offer
for
that,
Pirate Chain already. So if you want
sure,
privacy, you
yeah,
buy into court with Pirate and you're good. Like,
yeah.
yeah, then
And these
you buy
added
into an
privacy
account that you don't
enhancements,
have a name on, and there's really no way to tell. Like, how
Right.
are you going to
yeah,
figure out who that is? Like, unless you're tracing the transactions and trying to figure out where the node that issued them came from, but then that could potentially be a VPN or a proxy or whatever, right? So, like, it's really,
Right.
really, really hard. Like, in a system that's completely decentralized, it's nearly impossible to figure out who is who unless the person tells you, right? Like, and that's
Right.
how it should have been from the beginning with every blockchain. But because it got super centralized and trading on centralized exchanges was the only way that it could happen and so forth, that it got a lot worse, right? So it just ended up being to where now they could basically track everything because everybody uses centralized exchanges. Now, if they didn't, then there wouldn't be that problem, right? You can only have as much identity on an account as you put there. So yeah, like,
Is
obviously my account Croatic, people know it's me, right? But yeah.
what about being able to trace people by their avatar and their from their IP address? Has that been resolved
yeah.
yet?
What do you mean?
Like when I
The first time
message,
you exchange data, you get the IP address.
yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, like yeah, that you can't fix that until we have the dandelion method of relaying transactions and so forth, and
What's the
also
dandelion?
so that we talked about this earlier, where
Yeah, they probably went through all of it.
yeah, where when you issue a transaction, it doesn't come from your node. It comes from one other node connected to you and potentially a node connected to them randomly, right?
Oh,
So there's
that's
no
cool.
way, yeah, so there's no way to track like where it came from, right?
hey Jason,
Right, that's a
you
good
had
question too.
mentioned,
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that when you first said it and I forgot. You know that when you're getting an avatar, it could potentially be from another node that has that avatar. It doesn't necessarily have to be from the original node, right?
So eventually
Yeah.
it'll just spread out.
Yeah, so and avatars are one of those things that a ton of people have them because they're using QChat and they get the avatar in
Right.
QChat. So like you just happen to get the IP from him in that case. Like that, it's random. Like there's no way that you can guarantee that that avatar is coming
Well,
from
I
that
think it's
person's
because he
IP.
hasn't used QChat before.
Right, yeah, that's probably it then. Yeah, because he was the first peer to have that data, and that's the only time you're going to be able to do that. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. Once there are like a ton of nodes that have the data, then you're going to be getting it from whichever node you get it from, right? So
Jason, can you explain real quick? You've mentioned the null accounts. What is that for people who are
it's
unaware?
an account that's basically not owned by anyone, and it's able to be used by the ATs and so forth. It's like a system account basically. No one owns it. It has no no ownership over it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, in terms of privacy, I think it's also good for you guys to know that the group messaging is not private yet. That's something we have to work on
Right.
as well. So that's another
Yeah.
another improvement right there.
Yep, it is. And I have a concept that I think will work for that. Basically, we didn't want to just do, group encryption with a key that stays the same, because then if someone gets kicked out of that group, they could still have that key, right? So the whole idea is to make those keys rotate and then use multiple different keys to encrypt the information. So we will get there. Yeah.
To that point, just to clarify, right? So the QChat private messaging peer to peer is encrypted, but the group messaging part is not. For those who are
Right.
interested in actually seeing the proof of the encryption for peer to peer, that's on the wiki under the QChat section titled. I was trying to be proactive here, but I don't know. I lost it. Under a chain transaction encryption. Just thought I'd throw that out there as well. So when in doubt, did you check the wiki out?
Right.
So we have a new block explorer in the making, right? Going to be open source, or is open source, I should
Yes.
say, right?
Yep.
How does that integrate between just being a website versus integrating with Qortal? What's the plan for that?
Yeah, we can do the majority of the stuff right now. But the things like getting the US dollar price of Litecoin and stuff like that needs to have, like what I was talking about before, some software that's set up to grab that data from the internet and then relay it to QDN so that it can then be accessed on QDN. I was thinking like just a script or something that runs on a couple computers and just publishes the price every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. So yeah, because we have to have all the data on QDN. We're not reaching out to the internet, so that's the only thing. We should be able to build the majority of it as a Q app pretty quickly.
The best way to get price average without being manipulated is to go in the open market sell orders, but discount the first few, like 2 or 3 bottom orders, and then just take an average of the first 5,
Well,
and
we
that won't
have
be manipulated.
a price API that does that.
Oh, it
If you look,
does?
yeah, if you look at the average price that is pulled on the trade portal at the bottom, that comes from the price API.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah, so we have an API for the court price in the coins that we support, but I'm talking about like US dollar price. So if we want to display the US dollar price, we have to pull that from somewhere and then publish it on QDN somewhere where the Q app can grab it. Otherwise, we're like, we can't reach to the internet. So yeah.
With first time setup, what do you recommend to sync blocks the fastest way?
Well, we haven't implemented fast sync yet, so the blocks are only going to sync as fast as they do. It's kind of random based on which node you're syncing with at the time, what their connection is like, what
So would
their
more
hardware
peers
is
be the
like.
option?
More peers, yeah. More peers helps with basically everything. So more peers is always a good idea if you can do it. Allowing incoming connections is always a good idea. So yeah, I always allow incoming connections. I never have any issues on my node. So when people are like talking about all these issues that they're seeing, I never experience them because I have more peers on my node. So really, it makes a big difference. Like especially when it comes to getting data from QDN and publishing data to QDN.
And what would be the simple way to add peers? Or
The easiest thing to do is just go into your settings.json and increase the max peers, but you also need to allow port forwarding. So if you don't have port 12392 forwarded into your node to allow that to connect in, you need to do that first and then increase your max peers setting. So
nice,
just
thank you.
this, yeah.
That's another thing I wanted to talk about is I wanted to have an easy way to edit the settings.json file. So that way there would be something in the UI, like an editor
Yeah,
for
we're
that?
gonna do that. Yeah, but it requires the settings to be changeable with the API first. So we're working towards that, but it's not really high on development list right now.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to have like an API call to change settings first, and then that will also make it so that you don't have to restart the node, which would be cool. But yeah, we're not quite to that point. We're focused more on Q apps right now.
So all the stuff on the core is done, right? We just have to get the UI stuff.
Yep. Yep.
So is it actually creating like a new type of JavaScript since you're like injecting a JavaScript function into it?
What do you mean?
So like when you do I don't know if I still have the tab open, but you're gonna do like your it had a like a specific function in JavaScript for like saying getting an address's court value, right? But does that mean the UI is making like a new version of JavaScript, like a custom JavaScript?
Philip, you want to answer that one?
That part was done by Cal, but I'm pretty sure you just injects like a global utility, I guess. And so with a request, was it request Qortal or something like that? Yeah, you'll be able to have access to that function. And then afterwards, the only there's two parts of the UI. One is pretty much done. We finished it last week. Was just confirmation modals. So, for example, let's say you enter a QChat, QApp, and the QApp wants to know your address. Well, it's gonna do request request Qortal for the for your address, and then you have to confirm if you want them to know your address or not. You know, so you'll have you could be anonymous or not. You know, it's up to you to give the application the address or not. So we have a so that goes for addresses. Also, you'll be able to publish on QDN, join a group, send chat messages, and a bunch of other cases. So that's all done. We just have to test it out. The only part that's left is to put a separate plugin in the UI for QApps. So we're gonna have for now websites and QApps. So that's the only thing missing, which in theory shouldn't take too long, which is pretty much cloning the websites and putting the QApp service and changing it to download instead of loading. And then we're ready to go and just do a bit of testing, and that's it. So not much left.
Wow.
Yeah, we're close now. Yeah, I'm pretty stoked about it. So, but yeah, basically there are other functions now that you can call with websites, which basically turns them into Q apps, and then you can pop up a dialog box to the user to request the transaction to take place, right? So the user has to approve it. And we're going to make it so that if you want to, you can set it to automatically give your address to any Q app, but the rest of it needs to be manually approved. So if like they're requesting for you to submit a transaction to pay for something or whatever, or like any of the other stuff, it'll pop up a dialog box and ask you, it's requesting to make this transaction. Do you approve it? Yes. You know.
So is there going to be a similar pop-up if you're linking to another Q app or website? Or it's just going to go...
Yeah, that's not necessary. It's only stuff that is happening on behalf of the user. So, like, if they're asking for you to publish some data on QDN or like make a transaction of any type or whatever, right? Like, if you're building a website as the developer and you are linking from one site to another, no, you don't need to worry about that. It's only if it's requesting something from the user as far as input goes. Yeah.
I think we're out of questions.
Is there any works on making where you could buy court, like the other half of the trade portal?
To do what?
Like right now, you can only put up an order to sell court, but can we put up orders to buy court? Is
Oh,
that
trade.
how it
Auto
works?
buy, yeah, that's what you can do. Buy orders, yeah, and auto buy.
And Cal actually has written out a nice explanation as to why the auto buy was a quick fix for now, and how in the future it's absolutely it's possible that we can do that, right, Jason? It's within the
Yeah,
roadmap.
I,
It's
I
just
suggested an idea of basically
Mhm.
locking a P2SH in an AT, so we could do it the opposite way that we do it now. And Cal said that that could potentially work. We just, that's not a focus right now. We need to get the QF stuff done before we like start focusing on those things. And yeah, right now, like auto buy works just fine for like placing a buy order. So it's just not an on-chain thing that the node handles. It's handled in the UI, and nobody can see it other than the person who put it there. So, but it still does the same thing. So we basically have buy orders now. It's just not one that's seen on the transaction on the order books. So
Yeah. So what Cal said was the trade bot isn't an issue. That is off chain. The tricky part with buy orders is the on chain escrow that holds the funds while they
right,
are listed for sale and during the trade. For court sell orders, the court is held in an AT on the Qortal chain. But for buy orders, the foreign currency, such as Litecoin, would need to be held in the equivalent of an AT on the LTC chain. LTC and the other listed coins don't support smart contracts, so the listed amount will likely have to be held in a P2SH address. The problem with a P2SH address, at least in the context of HTLCs, is that you need to know the public key of the ultimate recipient before funding the P2SH. So that is difficult for this case, where you are listing an LTC offer without knowing who will ultimately decide to sell their court to you. That's not to say that it's impossible. There are ways to do this, but as you can see, it's very different from the way the trade portal currently works. So it would need some focused development time, and it was a long way down the list, so the auto buy was made as a quick interim solution.
right, yep.
So it couldn't be held by the legacy Litecoin address.
No, like the problem is that it needs to have something that's accessible once the shared secret happens, right? So it's like it's not like just a normal address, right? You can't just put it into a normal address because then you'd have to give access to that address too to be able to send it. So it's not like straightforward on chains that don't have the ability to do like what we can with the ATs. So that's
I
why
see.
we only have court sell orders at the moment.
Sounds like we have real estate for a troll box.
Yeah, we can do that.
I recommend using like agar trade. That'd be pretty fun because I like them dingleberries. I don't know if you guys have seen that website.
I'm
The
not
what?
familiar.
Oh, dude.
Because I like them dangleberries, baby.
You can
I'm like,
post the link in
what?
Qortal text.
Guys, 2 secs. Let me get in the link in the chat. Yeah, check this website out. aggr.trade. Not now, obviously. Like when at your leisure, not right now.
Yeah.
I don't want to distract from the vibe.
This bogey goes into the distance.
But yeah, like, like if the Probox or something, these sounds would be great to, I don't know. Once you hear them, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know what you were talking about. Sounds nice.
The dingleberries on Agar Trade, man. The sound effects.
That's
To
the
make a
best.
troll bot,
That's the
you know,
best part of
trading.
trading
You
on
guys know about
some
trading, right?
DMs.
Dude, I'm telling you, man. Once you hear them, you'll be like, oh my gosh, I need this in my life.
All right,
Which
guys.
one was it?
AGGR Trade. It's in the Court Talk VC.
I'm trying to
listing.
remember of the old exchanges. One of them had a
Oh.
regular ding.
Yeah.
Like cow.swap. It's good stuff.
Oh yeah, we should be able to choose which QChat ones that we want to have notifications. Which QChat's chats we want to be notified for.
Yeah. Those
It was that
cool.
supernova one or whatever it was called. It had a regular doing, doing. Well, that would be a toggle, right? Anyway, I was just kidding about the troll box. I haven't had it yet. I doubt seriously it's anyone's consideration.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not.
Yeah, it's just a thing, right?
Yeah, we could definitely do it, but why?
But it would change the focus. More people would be hanging out in the trade channel just reading that rather than being in general.
Yeah. I mean,
It would be pretty easy.
I think if you want to be taken seriously, you don't need a troll box. Trust me.
Right. Yeah.
No, no. Yeah, just the name I think is enough. Troll box.
Yeah. Right.
Replace the T.
Kind of
with
like
a
block
Q.
suckers.
The flying
block suckers. Yeah, that was.
Yeah,
cool.
you remember that? Whose idea was
Yeah.
that crap?
That was the armadillo.
Yeah, I mean it was my idea. I'm the one that made up block sucker, but it's what I called my burst miners. I called them block sucker 1, block sucker 2, and somebody's like, "We should call ourselves that." No, we shouldn't do that. We should not call ourselves block suckers.
It was the yellow and brown Dyson vacuum looking armadillo.
Oh, I have it.
tentacle
I have a
thing.
picture of it. Hold on. I save everything, man. But that's how it went. Some of the users that we had wanted to call ourselves the block suckers, and that went for a little while. And I was like, nah. So when we made the list, we called it the BS list, the block sucker list, and the people who didn't fit the list by way of cryptocurrency projects were, block suckers themselves. That works out better. I'm going to locate it now.
So, who exactly are the people who sign the auto updates?
The dev admins. Right now, it is myself. Let me see. I'll have a list. Hold on. Okay, so it's me, H Factor, Ido, G, Philip, Alpha, LOTW, Raz, Kat, Giselle, and Philip, if I didn't say Philip already. Those are the ones who could potentially sign it at the moment.
How many is that total? 11 or 12?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yep.
Okay. So, what percent do you need for it to get pushed?
At first, I thought it was 60 because the math actually went to 60, but technically on the chain, it is 40. So right now, we need 5 signatures.
Okay.
So that's going to be improved later, right? That's part of the plan.
Well,
Increase
more people are
that.
going to be added, yeah. Increasing it, I don't think is necessary. We just can add more people to the group, which increases the number of signatures.
Mm-hmm.
The math when it was less people, it was perfect to 60%, so that's what I thought it was. But yeah, come to find out, it was not. So I was told that like 2 weeks ago or a little longer, maybe.
Because of the null account.
Yeah, the null account I didn't take into consideration. Yeah. Oh well. So right now we need 5 signatures. As we add more people, it will continue to increase the number of signatures that we need. So that's really
more decentralized.
Right, that's the main thing.
Which is ultimately the same reason why I'm, happy to help. But ideally, we want people who can actually take part in these.
Were active, and so not every single person on the list can necessarily read the code at the moment, which is not as ideal as it could be. But we needed people who were active and who had, ambition for the project and who
and getting to know the team and watching the development, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
I may not be able to read the code, but I can see all the conversations and what's really brewing. So I've learned to
and honestly,
press
if you
in the
look
character.
at the code, you can read the comments, and the comments will tell you what the code does. So it's even if you can't read the code, you can still read what is going on. Yeah.
It's uploading. Thanks for translating for me, Rap, by the way. I just woke up, so blocks transactions,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I have a habit of that. If everybody here doesn't know that, I say words that are exactly the thing I mean, but not quite.
Yeah. There's terminology.
I'm
It
terrible
can be
at
confusing.
time.
I think what you were basically looking for was
Yeah, no, you explained it properly. I appreciate it.
I've got to get on this call, babe.
Hey, thanks for joining us, Mr. Coe.
Yes, thank you as well. Everyone.
Did I mistake that it
Thanks
was
for
actually
recording.
Philip who's been recording this, or was it you?
It was Co.
Coe,
Yeah,
Mr. Coe.
Yeah, I got 3
Gotcha.
hours
Okay.
to the point. I think I'm gonna head out.
Yeah,
A few
sweet.
things to do. I could stay here all night and chat about Qortal.
Yeah, man. Post the link. if
For
you get
sure.
set up.
So much
We're not
great
going
content.
anywhere,
Yes.
right? Being built to outlive us all.
So then let's get a repo of the other recordings. So, alrighty, been a pleasure, everybody.
Great.
Talk to y'all soon.
Have a good day.
All right, ciao,
Take
ciao.
care.